Good morning. This meeting of the Fremont County Board of County Commissioners is called to order. We will begin this morning with an invocation from Bradley Buck from Bridge to Life, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
Father in heaven, thank you for the privilege of praying for the leaders of our county. And I'm thankful for their willingness to look to you for help. In our complex society, we need your wisdom for the decisions that are being made on behalf of the people of this county. I pray that you will be honored by the proceedings here today. I pray for your will to be accomplished for the benefit of people of Fremont County. Thank you for your protection, for guiding our leaders, for being a good father to us all. Thank you for this day that you made. May it be a day of honoring you and walking in your ways for your name's sake. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, sir.
Roll call.
Commissioner Grantham.
Here.
Commissioner McFall.
Present.
Commissioner Bell.
Present.
County Attorney Jackson.
Present.
County Manager Carochi.
Present.
Planning and Zoning Director Victoria.
Present.
Approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I am unaware of any changes we need to make to today's agenda. I move to approve as presented.
Second.
Has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Bell.
Aye.
Commissioner McFall.
Aye.
Commissioner Grantham.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda, noting that we are not scheduling any public hearings on this meeting.
Second.
Has been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner McFall.
Aye.
Commissioner Bell.
Aye.
Commissioner Grantham.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Move on to our administrative and informational section of our agenda. We'll go first to our staff and elected officials. Tony, do you have an update for us today?
Well, we had
Or
Sean
I guess
the
we have
agenda
Sean on here first. So,
Time out.
pause.
Time out.
Okay.
We'll let you actually get ready.
Our budget and finance officer, Sean Sutton, for a sales and use tax report.
I was going to defer to you, Tony. Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Yeah, we'll be going over the auto use sales tax report and the lodging report this morning. This is through July and August 2023. So to start with the retail sales tax for Fremont County, July totaled $928,185, which was $97,558 more than 2022. Year to date, we collected $5,476,299, which is $410,865 more than 2022. As compared to our 2023 budget, we are $867,966 ahead. Thought as I look through kind of historically, if you'll notice on the chart, 2021, we had never had collections over 700,000. So that was first time we ever had that happen was April of 2021. Then quickly exceeded 800,000. But this is the first month that total collections have exceeded 900,000. So as we look through that, now July typically is our largest collection month. But just something unique and wanted to point out to the board and all the listeners out there, or viewers.
Thank you.
The auto use sales tax collection, this is through August. Total collections were $136,110. This is $3,857 more than 2022. Year to date, we've collected $1,010,500 $519. That's $33,334 more than 2022. And again, we're ahead of the 2023 budget by $227,186. The lodging tax report, as I indicated last month, still a good collection month. We did collect $10,609. This was less than 2022 by $16,650. It's an off-collection month, so typically we collect these quarterly. Total collections, $164,803, which is $29,299 ahead of 2022. The sheriff retail sales tax collection for July totaled $618,790. This was $65,038 more than 2022. Total collections year to date are $3,650,859, which is $273,901 more than 2022. Again, ahead of our 2023 budget by $325,859. The sheriff auto use tax collection for August totaled $90,740. This is $2,571 more than 2022. Year to date, we've collected a total of $673,860, which is $2,174 less than 2022. However, to budget, we are $140,347 ahead. So again, typically you'll see our budget, we are exceeding all budget areas. We typically like to budget conservatively on these revenues for our overall budget. I guess if there's any comments or questions, be happy to answer those.
Please.
Yes, I have just a couple of comments. As good as these numbers look on paper, they're actually very distressing for me. Because this does not scream Fremont County residents are making and spending so much more money. This screams of inflation, and that's terrifying to me. I don't like these numbers much because we shop here as well. We know what those numbers are. We know how inflated prices are right now and how much more we're paying for everything that we ever buy. I was just discussing over the weekend, I used to be able to go into the grocery store and bring home a cart full of groceries for $60, $70, and now it's almost $200. I mean, prices have just, what hasn't doubled has tripled, and that's what we're seeing in these reports is sales tax, additional sales tax on top of all of those prices. And so it does look really good for county numbers, but we understand what that means for the people who live here, and this just doesn't make me happy. But thank you, Sean.
Better than if there were parentheses around all those numbers under the same circumstances.
This is true.
And probably part of the bellwether that we have, at least as far as all those pages that you showed us, is that lodging tax. While the inflation is certainly affecting our revenues, just like it's affecting how much you are individually spending at the grocery store and everywhere else in retail, so is the county. The bellwether that we have there on the lodging tax is, we're not jumping ahead as far. People aren't coming and spending as much money this season across the board as far as our lodging goes. And of course, we won't have the full story until February, March.
Yeah, two large collections months.
Yeah.
Yep. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and so we still have a lot of information yet to see on that, and maybe that'll turn around. But anyway, I agree with Commissioner Bell. There is the other side of that story when we look at the revenues, but we could be in worse shape.
We absolutely could.
But I think that's, to your point, though, talking to the rafting industry and stuff, they were down.
Yeah.
And customers visited, which is all related, it's all relative, so.
Right.
I'm not sure the lodging tax will recover, but
We'll see.
we'll see.
Okay. Anything else for us?
Thank you for the comments.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Okay. Now, Tony, been waiting patiently over there.
Yeah, chomping at the bit here. Good morning, everyone. So Fremont County has the following job opportunity, which we haven't said that in a while, posted: Fremont County Sheriff's Department detention deputies. So if you're interested in going to work for the Sheriff's Department, please contact our HR department at 719-276-7410 or go to our website at fremontco.com. Department of Transportation, just a reminder that South Street was closed at the intersection of 15th Street as well as 15th Street from Central to South Street yesterday, and will remain closed through Thursday, September the 28th, while crews conduct culvert installations. The roads will be closed from 7 a.m. until 2 p.m. At Pathfinder Park, our DOT crews are paving the roundabout as you come into the park off of Highway 115, and we expect them to be done with this project and access to the park open by Thursday, September the 28th. This will greatly enhance both sides of the park, entry and ingress and egress into and out of the park. The Sheriff's Department, our chiller project, the Sheriff's Department's HVAC chiller is over 30 years old and has not been working properly or at all really for most of the summer. And so we have made a decision to replace the non-working rooftop chiller unit with an upgraded unit with an expected lifespan of 20 plus years. The scope of the work is to remove and properly dispose of the working rooftop HVAC water system chiller unit, installation of a new 50-ton rooftop HVAC glycol system chiller unit, and startup testing and certification of the proper HVAC system operation. This project has been advertised for bids on BidNet Direct and on the Fremont County website page since September the 19th, and it closes on October the 10th. The contractor pre-bid meeting on site is this Thursday, September the 28th at the Sheriff's Department. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Any questions for Mr. Croce?
Oh, thank you, Tony.
Okay, we move now, actually, for our elected officials. Do we have any updates from my colleagues here?
Sure.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the last meeting, I mentioned that I was headed to DC. I was there last week for about a day and a half. It was kind of a quick trip, but there, along with about 35 other commissioners, some places are called supervisors from the western states, advocating to the Congress for our PILT payments, which is payment in lieu of taxes. That's money that we receive because the amount of federal lands in our counties that we can't collect taxes on. We receive around, it kind of varies, but around $1.2, $1.3 million a year for that. We never know from year to year whether that's going to be funded or not. Sometimes they hold it hostage up there in DC and kind of use it as a bargaining chip. We've kind of been assured this year that it will get paid. They're making lots of crazies up there. In fact, you know, the government's probably going to shut down the end of the week, but we should get our PILT money. We were also advocating for long-term payments rather than just year to year. We've got to create our budget, and we create it with that $1.23 million in there, and then we may not get it after the first of the year. But so it makes it pretty tough. But we had some very good meetings with a lot of Congress folks and some of the senators, and I think we came away from there with a good feeling that we're going to be okay at least for another year or two. But hopefully we can get long-term. There's a bill supposed to be introduced here pretty quick for long-term funding for that, so that's kind of exciting, and I hope that goes somewhere. A little more on the Pathfinder Park paving of the roundabout there. We appreciate everybody's waiting on us for a day or two to get that done, because it is going to create a much better road going in and out of there with Pathfinder Event Center and now the new pavilion. We've increased the traffic out there quadruple fold. I don't even know what the word would be. A bunch. Exponentially. And it's that road it just goes away fast. So paving the roundabout is going to make it more stable for the trucks that come in and out of there. And then we are going to chip seal our road and the parking lot. We learned during the fair, of all times, about the drainage problems that we have. So that's going to kind of be addressed too. But it's really going to help out on the park out there. The roundabout will stop there on the rec district side, whereas theirs will still just be gravel. But it is going to enhance that whole entrance out there. So we thank the Road and Bridge Department for doing the work out there for us, and it's going to be nice. And just bear with us for a couple of days, folks. I know there's people trying to get in there all the time, and I appreciate that, but give them a minute, let them work on those roads, and thank you.
Okay. Commissioner?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I just would like to take a moment. I thank you for your indulgence. I know we do have a long agenda today. Some of our items are very, very quick to run through, but I need to take a moment this morning to pay tribute to a sculptor and community treasure that Fremont County recently lost by the name of Robert Henderson. I don't typically like to read things at these meetings, but I want to get this right, so I just want to give you a heads up. I will be reading. Mr. Henderson was admired by an entire generation of World War II veterans for his incredible creations. His life's work chronicled the history of aviation in monumental bronze sculptures. Even if you don't recognize his name, don't think you know who he is, I guarantee you would recognize any of his sculptures. Perhaps his most impressive accomplishment is called the Study Hall, a most unique outdoor sculpture garden at the United States Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. The garden houses extraordinary bronze warbird memorials. There are 4 World War II bombers and 1 World War I cargo plane. These warbirds tell the modern-day history of the Air Force to those who study at this prestigious school, as well as the millions of visitors that they have there every year. Robert also has placed his monumental sculptures made of bronze, wood, and chrome at major international airports and museums around the country. I've actually seen some of those in different airports, and it's amazing to walk up and to recognize the work before I've even seen it and to know that it came from Fremont County, Colorado. Fortunately for all of us, Robert did not limit his creativity to those impressive warbirds. He was working on a duplication of the study hall at various sites around the country before his death, as well as a new series called Pioneer Jews, capturing the effect of noteworthy figures such as Josephine Earp and Levi Strauss. Ambitious to the end, Robert also was working in the abstract through a provocative body of work, focusing upon womanhood through a series of bronze vases and fountains. Ultimately, this work, meshed with live theater, was to evolve into the event called Womanhood. Robert truly had no boundaries. His art provides beauty and challenges thought, as all enduring art must. In addition to his world-famous warbirds, Robert also created many other lifelike sculptures that our local residents are likely familiar with, including Just Friends, a bronze of Louise and Otis sitting on a bench, which currently resides in our county atrium just steps away from where we sit, as well as the beautiful life-size bronze of Bird Millman, titled Bird on a Wire, and on display here on Main Street in Canyon City. All of Fremont County has suffered this loss. We send our very best wishes to his friends and his family. God bless Robert and Godspeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Can I add to that right quick, Mr. Chair? There's also a sculpture in the library that Mr. Henderson made after his mom, who was in a WASP, which was Women Air Force Service Pilots, or Women's Auxiliary Service Pilots. That's right as you go in the door of the library. It's pretty cool to see, so check those out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for calling attention to that, Commissioners. For my update today, I'll keep it brief. If you were aware of our meeting that we had this last Thursday, it addressed much of my concerns over an upcoming ballot measure, and I will leave it at that because apparently that's all I can say. But it is online, and our opinions are well documented about that particular thing. Looking at the lawyer.
The attorney's looking at you, too.
I'd say it's time to move on.
Okay, fine. Boy, this is really tempting. In any case, I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. We now move on to the citizens' time to address the county commissioners on items that are not scheduled on the agenda. So if you do wish to address us on something that is not on the agenda today, now is that time. Is there anyone who wishes to? Not seeing any. We will move on to old business, unless this is...
Nope.
Nope, okay. Old business. proposed regulations, and this will be a follow-up to our prior meeting in regard to some of the changes being made to our ag zone districts. And I will turn to our Planning and Zoning Director, Dan Victoria.
Hello, everyone.
Morning.
So, at the last meeting, we discussed the zone consolidation and rewrite for the residential, well, for the hopeful residential 1, residential 2, and residential 3 new zone districts. I'll give a brief overview of all 3 of them, and then if anyone has any questions, I can dive in a little bit deeper, if that works.
Fine.
So for that residential 1 zone district, that would be a consolidation of the agricultural suburban and the agricultural estates zone districts. Currently, they have the same exact lot size requirements, and they only differ with 3 different uses. So we've consolidated the uses from the 2 different districts, and wound up adding a couple new uses in there in order to bring them up to speed a little bit. We gave that zone district a new definition, but those are the major changes for the residential 1 zone district. In the residential 2, we would be consolidating the agricultural rural and the agricultural living zone districts. The agricultural living zone district currently has a 9-acre minimum. The lots that are currently ag living would be subject to the agricultural rural zone district requirements. So there's some additional uses for the agricultural rural. And those are being brought down either by consolidation from agricultural living or some new uses being added to modernize the regulations. So the requirements of the current agricultural rural zone district would be the new requirements for this new residential 2. With some new uses and a new zone description. And then for the residential 3 zone consolidation, that would be a consolidation of the agricultural farming and ranching and the agricultural forestry zone district. That would have the lot requirements of the agricultural farming and ranching zone district, and consolidation of uses, a couple new uses for updating, and a new description on that one as well. So that's the bulk of the consolidation.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Victoria?
My only question is a clarification.
Yes.
This is part of a complete rewrite of our regulations, and we're only beginning.
Yes, so that is, that's very good. I'm not sure if I've ever touched on that so far. We, Planning and Zoning Department, we're in the process of rewriting the Fremont County zoning resolution, the Fremont County subdivision regulations, redoing all of our applications, and diving into the master plan. So this is the very, toe in the water kind of start of a full rewrite of all of planning and zoning.
Okay, thank you for that. And the plan is, I believe, to approve these individually as we go, with a final public hearing to come before they take effect, but we're looking at an effective date of April 15th of 2024, is that correct?
That is correct. So the goal here is to adopt each section as we go along, and then we will do another public hearing with a formal adoption for the entire regulation as a whole. By doing it that way, they'll also give us the ability to, if there's minor tweaks along the way that come up, that we'll be able to address those topics.
All right, thank you.
And so this is essentially what we're doing here today will be the first step in the process of the preliminary approvals of this section. But the final adoption will be in April, and we'll be able to incorporate all the public comment that we receive over that course of time for all of these changes.
Yes, sir.
And be able to incorporate them in the final draft.
That is correct.
Right. Okay.
Just a comment, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
This is something that we tabled at the last meeting. We did have a public hearing. We appreciate those that did show up and have those comments for that, and they were taken in
Into consideration.
consideration. Thank you. Man, I don't know what's
See what
wrong.
happens when you have a couple of BC.
Yeah, it just messes you all up.
You just get done.
Now we see what's wrong. So As you said, this is just the first part of this. The other sections will also have public hearings, so anybody that has any concerns or comments about those will be allowed at that time to comment on those as well. And so I think that's important that we do have comments from those that deal with these on a frequent basis, whether it be contractors, developers, whatever, because it helps to make these better, and that's what we're trying to do, is make these regulations, kind of bring them up to date, actually. They're kind of outdated. Stuff in there that was in there for a reason 30 years ago, but it doesn't apply nowadays, so that's what the whole idea of this is.
And more user-friendly.
Yep,
Much more user-friendly.
much.
Is there a motion?
Procedural question first to our county attorney. Can this be rolled, all 3 residential zones be rolled into one motion, or do we need 3?
You could do one.
Okay, yes, sir, I have a motion.
Please.
I move to approve residential 1, residential 2, and residential 3 zone consolidation and rewrites as presented.
Resolution number 29.
Resolution number 29.
Second.
Do we need to add in the effective date on that motion?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, we do. Moving to take effect on April 15th of 2024. Thank
Okay.
you.
Still second.
Has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Bell?
Aye.
Commissioner McFall?
Aye.
Commissioner Grantham?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right. On to new business. Let's go to item number 1, our service recognition resolution for Mr. Steve Larson. So, where are you at?
He's hiding in the back.
There you are.
He's wearing regulation clothing. No wonder I couldn't find him.
Civilian clothing.
Well, we have a resolution here. I think that Commissioner Bell is ready to read. And so, you know, we're going to put you in the hot seat. We're going to bring you up to the mic so everybody can look at you. And the commissioner will read it.
All right, Steve, if you would like to come on up, please.
She's going to do it right off the bat.
I am going to do it right off the bat. Whereas the Board of County Commissioners of Fremont County, Colorado regretfully accepts the retirement of Mr. Steve Larson as Fremont County Department of Transportation Light and Heavy Duty Technician. And whereas Steve Larson has been a loyal and valued employee of Fremont County from July 27th of 1998 until September 28th of 2023, earning much respect and admiration for his extraordinary level of dedication and professionalism for the county. And whereas Steve Larson provided Fremont County and its citizens with his expertise during his years as an equipment operator, truck driver, and 23 years as a light heavy-duty mechanic for Fremont County's fleet for 25 years. And whereas Steve Larson's accomplishments are many and include the following: equipment and vehicle troubleshooting and repairs, metal fabrication and welding, building and growing with the shop team and department, and engine rebuilding. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Fremont County, Colorado, hereby publicly recognizes and expresses its deep appreciation and that of the residents of Fremont County to Steve Larson for his decades of devoted service to Fremont County. And therefore, be it further resolved that this resolution shall be read into the record of the Board of County Commissioners as a tribute to Steve Larson's service, and that the official seal of Fremont County shall be affixed thereto and delivered to him. With that, Mr. Chair, I would like to move to approve this resolution for Steve Larson.
Excellent.
I will second that.
Excellent. Steve, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your years.
It's been a great place to work.
Oh, hit that button
Microphone,
on that.
yes.
Center button. There you go.
Thank you very much. It's been a great place to work, a good job, and I've actually enjoyed it, so good guys to work with, so.
Steve, let me ask you, how much has the shop changed in 23 years, or 25 years?
Not enough.
Yeah, I know. It's probably twice as big and still behind.
It's not keeping up with the rest of the county.
Yep.
So
Appreciate your work.
That needs work.
Yep, I agree.
Well, we definitely appreciate your many years of service and the great work that you've done for the county, and even under some lacking circumstances. And so we do appreciate that. And testament to your service is all the folks that are in this room today that came to see you off. And So
thank you.
We appreciate all of the crew and appreciate you. So with that, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Bell?
Aye.
Commissioner McFall?
Aye.
Commissioner Grantham?
Aye.
Motion carries.
And with
And
that,
Steve, we're going to come around and take a picture with you. We've got a plaque for you as well. We'd like
Okay.
to present you with.
let's do it.
Scatter.
I have to take a few for good measure. All right, one more.
Happy retirement, Steve. You deserved it.
We do have a public hearing scheduled for 10 o'clock. However, we do have, the next three items should be relatively quick. And so we're going to roll through all three of those real quick and then stop between items number 4 and 5 and go to our public hearing for the mystery subdivision. So let's go to item number 2 and ask Alicia Stone, our HR director, to come up and present item number 2. Resolution, I think, will be number 30, amending the March 2019 edition of the Fremont County Personnel Policies and Procedures Manual, Chapter 2, Recruitment, Selection, and Hiring, adding Section 2.10. Alicia.
So this is to coincide with Colorado Power Act. It broadens the type of conduct that constitutes harassment. So we had to add Section 2.10 to the personnel policies to support that.
Okay. Ms. Jackson, any additional comments on that?
No, it tracks the Colorado law and has the required language in there. It does not cross over with federal laws, though. They are separate in our personnel policies.
Okay. Which is a frequent occurrence, especially as of late, making changes to match our state statute and sometimes federal law. Any questions or comments for Ms. Stone?
Thanks for keeping us legal.
No, yeah, I'm going to do it. I have a motion for you, Mr. Chair.
Please.
I move to approve resolution number 30, amending the March 2019 edition of the Fremont County Personnel Policies and Procedures Manual, Chapter 2, Recruitment, Selection, and Hiring, adding Section 2.10.
Second.
Okay. Has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner McFall?
Aye.
Commissioner Bell?
Aye.
Commissioner Grantham?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Alicia.
Alicia.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the request for a transfer of ownership for SRU 99-009, the Florence Rose Guest House at 1305 West 3rd Street in Florence. The transfer of ownership is to Jeff and Nicole Coots?
Couts.
Couts.
Yes.
Couts. And rename the Red Rosebud Bread, rename it to the Red Rosebud Bed and Breakfast.
And you said these would be easy.
Yeah, I said they would be easy. All right. Mr. Couts, please just give us a brief description of what's happening and we'll go from there.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
This is my first foray into Canyon City, Fremont County politics or whatever. So got a letter from the county, found out we needed to switch. I wasn't aware there was a special use permit in place, so we took care of it. We've come from the Denver metro area, my wife and I. My wife is a Canadian she's been in the country 8 years.
soon to have her naturalization, actually November 2nd. We're going to
Congratulations.
get her naturalized and, you know, but nah, she's a super host. She worked in fine dining for a decade in Vancouver. So the place, you know, we have 5 rooms that we rented out, and the former owners were there almost 11 years. So they were retired. You know, it's a big place, a lot to do. So we've done a lot. We came in last year, June 20th. We took over, started running the business 21st. So it was busy, and as the numbers show, the lodging this year has dropped off a little bit from what we've seen from last year to this year, even in our booking. So we love it here. We're planning to be here for a long time. This is my retirement, so I appreciate it. You got any questions for me?
Any questions? Mr. Couch?
You have none.
Okay, well, let's turn quickly to our Planning and Zoning Director, Mr. Victoria.
All right. Yeah, so code enforcement, as part of their annual reviews of all the permits, realized there was a transfer of ownership, so they had reached out to Jeff. Immediate feedback back to us. He came in, reviewed the entire file, knows the parameters of the file, and is comfortable satisfying everything. So I see no reason why this shouldn't be transferred.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Victoria? Okay. Any comments or questions, or comments, I should say, from the audience on this matter on the agenda? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
Need to assign resolution number 31 to it.
This is a resolution.
All right, Mr. Chair, I move to approve Resolution 31, the transfer of ownership for SRU 99-009, the Florence Rose Guest House at 1305 West 3rd Street in Florence. This transfer shall go to Jeff and Nicole Couts, and it will be renamed the Red Rosebud Bed and Breakfast.
Second that, and welcome you guys to the area.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Bell?
Aye.
Commissioner McFall?
Aye.
Commissioner Grantham?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right. And item number 4, requesting the transfer to ownership for SRU 99-001 Reliant Storage LLC at 5291 State Highway 115, Florence, Colorado. The transfer of ownership is to Florence Holdings LLC and will be renamed to Reliant Self-Storage LLC. Mr. Gary McWilliams.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Same, just describe what's going on and then we'll go
We
from there.
just took over the thing, kind of same deal. We got the special use review stuff. Oh crap, how did we miss that? You know, so we're in the process of getting that all caught up. I'm going to continue the same services as a self-storage facility. That area right there on 115 is kind of a dark area, so we've done some improvements on that as far as putting in some area lights. We've brought power to that facility so that we can upgrade the security and the cameras and stuff like that on there. Got with Dan, planning and zoning, went through the stuff. He got me some of the original site plan information so we knew what was going on there to begin with. Reviewed all that, and our plans are to keep it as a self-storage thing. We've put up our fences. We're going to convert the gates and everything over to auto lock and all that. And then try to move forward on moving in with the extra other 3 units that were approved on the original site plan sometime in the next 12 to 24 months.
Fantastic. Okay, any questions? Sure. Mr. Victoria.
All right. Gary summed that one up really well. We reached out, code enforcement as part of the annual review, reached out, realized there was a transfer of ownership. Gary instantly came in, explained what was happening, researched the entire file to be comfortable with what the original permit allowed for. This one still seems pretty easy, just like the last one. They know what the expectations are, and they work with us.
Okay. And a lot of these things, just to make note for the millions of folks watching, this happens here and goes through us for approval because there's an SRU on these particular properties.
Yes, sir. So all of the permits that we have, the special permits within the county, if there's a transfer of ownership of that permit, it requires them to come back to the board for an official transfer.
Right. Okay. Anything further?
Got a motion, Mr. Chair?
Perfect.
I move to approve resolution number 32, which will be SRU, transfer of ownership for SRU 99-001, Reliant Storage LLC at 5291 State Highway 115, Florence. Transfer in ownership to Florence Holdings LLC and rename it to Reliant Self-Storage LLC.
I second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner McFall?
Aye.
Commissioner Bell?
Aye.
Commissioner Grantham?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, sir.
Good luck, Gary.
All right. Thank you for everybody's patience on that. Knew those weren't going to take very long, so we will move now at the time of 10:10 a.m. to our public hearing on the agenda for 22-001 Mystery Subdivision Filing 2. And we'll open the public hearing. And we will begin, I think, with Ms. Bellantoni,
Dr. Bell.
Dr. Bellantoni.
Good morning.
That's going to be hard to do. You saw that, huh? Did you see me back up? It was like, whoo. Push that button on
Microphone,
your mic,
please.
please. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, kind sir. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. This morning I am here on behalf of Mr. Hoshi Mystery. He is with us today, and he is the owner and applicant of the Mystery Subdivision Filing Number 2. I'd like to note that in the staff report, it states that the applicant is in fact Mr. and Mrs. Mystery, and Mrs. Mystery is deceased for some time, and the death certificate is in the application packet. So please be clear that the applicant is in fact Mr. Mystery only. I also have with us today Alex Ewers from Three Rocks Engineering, who will speak to our utility and other engineering development. We also have with us Jody Alderman of Alderman Bernstein, who will be speaking on some issues. And then, of course, me. A little property history is that the parcel was purchased in 1968. You don't need that. Who's running that? Who am I speaking to for this role? Hi,
Tony.
Hi, thank you. Purchased the parcel in 1968. In 1997, it was subdivided to southeast 5 acres, which is now a house and a private owner, and the subject property now is 33.65 acres. The proposed subdivision is 7 lots, and Mr. Hoshi's vision, Mr. Mystery's vision, has been a upscale gated community on the north side of Penrose, and it would be a gated private road. Mr. Mystery has Lot 2, which is 5.46 acres. It has his residence, it has some outbuildings. So the other parcels in the subdivision are lots 1 and then 3 through 7, which vary in size, but all meet the criteria of the agricultural rural zone district. All proposed lots will access onto 3rd Street either directly or via Margarita Way. And Margarita Way is a granted private easement via the access easement and servitude agreement, which Ms. Alderman will speak to. Margarita Way will be constructed to a county gravel road standard. So that waiver that is listed as a request, that is not a request. And that request was made in March of 2022, that it would be constructed to county standards. And now I will ask Mr. Ewers to come forward and speak to development.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
My name is Alex Ewers with Three Rocks Engineering, and I'm here to talk about all things utilities, dirt, and drainage. Mr. Carochi, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, thank you very much. So this is our layout for the subdivision. As you can see, Margarita Way extends from the south up into the subdivision from 3rd Street. That road, as Dr. Bellantoni mentioned, is built or is designed to county standards. It's a gravel road coming off of the gravel 3rd Street. Utilities are coming right up that road. We have water, gas, electric, and telecom proposed there. Water has all been coordinated with Penrose Water District through several iterations and came to something that works really well for everybody. We've also been communicating with Chief Ritter and have added 2 fire hydrants to this proposed subdivision, one at the northeast corner of L and 3rd and one at the end of Margarita Way to satisfy the fire district. If you could go to the next slide for me.
Where would you say the second one was?
At the very north end of Margarita Way.
At the cul-de-sac?
Yes, sir. Correct. As I mentioned, we've been coordinating with Penrose Water District and have secured an easement with them. I believe it's a 50-foot easement shown on the plans, which is what they requested. Yep, going right up Margarita Way and extending to the end of the cul-de-sac there. If we go to the next slide, please. This is just a cross-section showing standard gravel road, typical of your county gravel roads for Margarita Way, along with some standard construction notes on there. If we go to the next slide, please. Then finally, Beaver Park Water District has a line that crosses the property from the west to the east, and it's currently a piped line. To satisfy their concerns, what we did is we slipped it in a steel casing for where Margarita Way will be crossing this line. Just basically makes it completely bulletproof. No matter who runs over it, it's buried. It's got a steel casing on it in addition to the PVC pipe that it's already in. And that way it secures and makes sure that that irrigation line won't be damaged or inhibit users downstream. I believe that's everything I had to talk about, but if y'all have any questions about the utilities, drainage, or any other engineering concerns, I'm happy to answer them now or later. Otherwise, Dr. Bellantoni, I believe, will come up and talk
I got a
little
quick
more.
question, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Okay.
So that irrigation pipe, is there any other culverts across that road, Margarita Way?
I don't believe so.
I noticed there was concerns from the fire department that if there are, they need to be strong enough to hold 37 ton.
Yep.
And I'm sure that one will, but if there's any others, are those addressed as well?
Let me look here real quick. We have one 18-inch culvert proposed right at the southern end of Margarita Way with a minimum of 1 foot cover. 1 foot minimum cover is the standard for 18-inch CMP. That's what you'll see as a standard for most county and
that'll be on to 3rd Street, I take it then?
So it's, yes, right at Margarita Way and 3rd Street,
Correct.
the culvert's crossing Margarita.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ewers. On to the next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so Mr. Mystery subdivision aligns and is harmonious with the community. It is a residential use in a residential community. The lots vary in size in this community, which shows here anywhere from 40 acres to less than 2 acres. And the subject parcel you can see there, and then you can see a 5 acre to the east and then a 1.3 to the west. So his 4.5 acre approximate subdivision lots align with that. The zoning is ag rural. This, as Mr. Ewers mentioned, has gone through a number of configurations, and I would like to explain, share the evolution of these configurations, as this was not arbitrary or random. There were reasons for each change that got us eventually to the configuration that you have seen. Next slide, please. So in September 19th, we had a pre-hearing meeting as required, and this is where Mr. Mystery brought up what his vision to the staff's consultant regarding his gated community. So from the outset, L Street was a local road, and at the time it was not to be maintained by the county. This is the report that was presented to us after the meeting. And if the owner would like to have L Street maintained, then it would need to be brought up to county standards. So we were told at that time that L Street was a local road and it was not maintained, and it was an option for us to either have it maintained or not maintained. We were told at the time that the 25-foot road easement along the north boundary could be vacated as a notation on the final plat. So, of course, we said, okay, that sounds like a great opportunity, and we put that on the plat. And then lastly, Mr. Mystery has had in mind a private road and a gated private road from the beginning, regardless of the configuration. So the gated private road, L Street, required improvement in order to be maintained. So I had cataract surgery, and I am struggling to see, and I have new eyes. I am much better than Planning Commission, but I don't know what to do here. So just please.
Need me to hold it for you? So
You know, maybe so. I'm really struggling. Okay. If we could proceed to the next slide. So this was configuration number 1, and it was Margarita Court at the time. Yes, we changed the name, went due west to L Street. And the proposal was that Margarita Court would not be maintained by the county, and that the improvement to L Street would be from the intersection of Margarita then Court to 3rd Street South. We could proceed to the next slide. Oop. So here it is from an aerial showing the approximate location. And what happened here is you can see where the yellow circle is, that is an outcrop of bedrock, and then the stand of trees to the west on L Street. We could slide down again. The next slide, please. And here's an actual picture. You can see the stand of trees. They're quite thick. So Mr. Mystery decided that he was concerned about this privacy barrier that already existed. He was concerned about the outcrop of rock on the west side of the parcels being inhibitive for building the roads and people's homes. And so he proposed slide number, this one, configuration number 2. And you can see that configuration number 2, I don't know if you can see it, I can't see it, I see it. I see it. So now you can see Margarita Way is a 90-degree angle, and Mr. Mystery chose to follow a fence line that already had disturbance, already had a thinner break in the trees along L Street, and so that was why we went to configuration number 2. At this point, again, lots 4 through 7 access onto Margarita Way. This configuration had a number of challenges in that it had 3 fire hydrants now. By the way, as Mr. Ewers pointed out, we have had a continuous conversation with Chief Ritter through the whole thing as all these things have been happening. So it had 3 fire hydrants, and it was at this time that it was brought to our attention that now L Street, and improvements would have to be all of L Street, and not just L Street, but also 2nd Street. And so that was added to the cost to do the development, even though, as you can see, the actual use of L Street was now less, and it was a shorter distance to get to an already paved road, a collector road for Fremont County. Next slide, please. So on this, if we can slide, there we go. You can see that now this configuration did eliminate the need to go through the outcrop of rock. It did preserve the stand of trees, but now we had another problem. And that was that Margarita Way was now over 750 feet long. So that wasn't going to work at that point. And that brought us to September 2022, a year ago, which is configuration number 3, which is why we are here today. There we go. And now we have wedge-shaped lots. Margarita Way is still private. It's gated. All access, lots 4 through 7 are on Margarita Way. The fire chief, as Mr. Hughes pointed out, was happy with 2 fire hydrants instead of 3 fire hydrants. All access is on 3rd Street, and this is noted on the plat. And in addition, this presented a unique opportunity to have built-in open space in a gated community because of the requirement to have the 300-foot build line. You can see that, I think. Can you? I can't. I don't know. Oh, here we go. Here we go. There's a 300-foot build line on the, right here for each lot. And so this area around the cul-de-sac is now an open space, just by design, making more space between the homes. In addition to this, this is when the cul-de-sac, Apple Valley line going across east to west, and Mr. Ewers already spoke to the improvements that we agreed to with the Beaver Park Water District. Next slide, please. So again, I would like to reiterate that Mr. Mystery is the owner and the developer. He's by himself. This is his project alone, his parcel alone. He is not a corporation out of Denver. He doesn't have partners. So a bottom line matters. So we're presenting to you these estimates were pulled together in 2022. So we all know, based on Commissioner Bell's report regarding inflation, these are not accurate at this point. But at that time, you can see the first configuration had an approximate $425,000 improvement price tag. And in this cost estimate, the improvement for L Street south to 3rd is in this subgrade in class 6 because it would be brought up to a gravel road. Then came having to improve all of L and all of 2nd, and here is, it went over $500,000. So now we're at version 3 or configuration 3, and 3rd Street is an asphalt surface. It is a collector road according to the description from our traffic engineer, and that was $330,000, again, as of 2022. So what I'd like to do now is just make some comments regarding the staff report. On page 9 in the staff report, the county's consultant requested that additional notices be sent to the utilities. Utilities were mailed notices as required on September 13th, 2022, with configuration 3 in the mailing, and the configuration has not changed since that time. The receipts for those notices are in the application, and so I humbly request that those notices, I don't understand the purpose of a notice at this time when we're in a public hearing. Next is L and 2nd Street improvements. If we could go to slide 15, sir. So this is 3rd Street, as it is. I believe, help me, Hoshi, this is looking east. This is looking east. And according to the roadway impact form, Mr. Hodgson of LSC Transportation increased the trips to 66. He did the study and said 3rd Street is a designated collector, and he determined that the collector would accommodate the 66 trips. If we could move to the next slide, please. This is L Street. L Street is a dirt road. It's looking north, then to the one on the left is looking north from the intersection of 3rd and L, and then on the right is looking south, and then if you scroll down a little bit more, it gives you a better view of looking, I'm looking north, but it's a dirt road. Next slide, please. You could also see the stand of trees that I'm talking about on the east side of L. This is the north end of L Street, and you can see that it's got a gate on it. It's a dead-end road. You can see the no trespassing sign, and again, you can see the stand of trees, very thick stand of trees. Next slide, please. And here is 2nd Street. So on the right, that is 2nd Street facing east from L Street, and you can see that it's not aligned. It is also a dirt road. There's a few residents up there, but it's a very private and quiet road, and with minimal traffic. So that's just to make you aware if you haven't been out to the area recently. In the staff report, it is repeatedly stated that the applicant is avoiding costs for development. And we, the team for Mr. Mystery, take exception to this because Mr. Mystery is willing to make the improvements and bear the burden of doing that. He is one person, he has limited funds, and so yes, the dollar amount does matter, and it just doesn't make sense, don't understand why all of L and 2nd Street was suddenly required to be improved when really only a south portion of L could be improved to a gravel road and get on 3rd Street, but that was not an opportunity. On page 7 of the staff report, it states that L Street and 2nd Street has to be improved now or it's going to become a burden to the county. And we disagree with this statement, that it'll be a burden because and you can see the vacant land to the west and in the area, in that when those areas decide to subdivide or improve, either at the end of the dead end or to the west, or even on 2nd Street, if those parcel owners decide to subdivide and access onto L and 2nd, then that's their choice to improve L and 2nd Street, but it isn't mandatory that L and 2nd Street be improved when the access is onto 3rd. In addition, if you improve L and 2nd Street to county standards, then the county is going to be increasing their maintenance of those two roads because they're currently not maintained by the county. On page 9 of the staff report, making it clear that Department of Transportation accepted the increased trips. We have not received any comments since the engineered and stamped roadway impact analysis form was submitted to DOT in the county. So with that, we assumed no news is good news, but yes, I know what assume does to everybody. But I would assume that if it was not appropriate, that we would have heard something. So with that, L and 2nd Street does not serve this subdivision. And at this juncture, we assume that this is aligned with the needs or meets the approval of Fremont County Department of Transportation. Also on page 10, Fire Chief Ritter did accept configuration 3 regarding the width of Margarita Way, gravel road to Margarita Way, As Commissioner McFall brought up about the culverts for the weight of the emergency vehicles, we sat down and had a meeting with him and then numerous conversation with Chief Ritter. And he eventually signed off on configuration 3. An important note is that in the current condition of the road, and whether it's configuration 1 or 3, all traffic goes to 3rd Street. It goes south to 3rd Street, the collector street, that's the asphalt. So having all of them come out of Margarita Way onto 3rd Street, or had they come south on L Street to 3rd Street, they're all coming to 3rd Street, the collector. At this point, I will turn this over to Ms. Alderman to speak to some more topics.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Jody Alderman. I'm an attorney from Denver. I have my own small real estate firm in Denver, and Mr. Mystery got me involved in the project a while ago to formulate some of the documents related to the development, one of them being the access easement and servitudes, which is the document that controls Margarita Way. I also assisted a bit in negotiating an easement with Penrose Water District on the same Margarita Way for its water line, and then have consulted along the way. So the team asked me to come today just to speak to a few of the points that were brought up in the staff report, and to also speak to the request for the vacation of the 25-foot road easement on the north boundary of the property. So I think the next slide shows where that road easement is. So it's the north boundary of the property. It's 25 feet wide, and it's a road easement. It wasn't a dedication. It was an easement on the plat in 1997. So I shouldn't say it wasn't a dedication. It was an easement dedicated to the county, but it's not a fee right-of-way. So it's not for the purpose of utilities, only a road. And its location is where 2nd Street might be if it was constructed. And I think if we go to the next slide, there's a lot of information on the slide, but I think the important parts of this really explain why there's no purpose really for 2nd Street to ever be constructed on the north boundary. If you, I got the pointer here. If you, well. You're on the ceiling. Okay. If you see the label that says 25 foot for roadway to Fremont County at the bottom right-hand side, it points to the north boundary of Mr. Mystery's property. And then you see to the east, when that property was developed, there was no requirement to dedicate for 2nd Street. So there's no property there for 2nd Street to ever be built. That wasn't required of that particular developer. And then if you go to the west of Mr. Mystery's property, there is one block of 2nd Street that is constructed there. And then you go beyond that to the next parcel west, and that right-of-way or easement for 2nd Street was in fact vacated. So 2nd Street isn't connected anywhere beyond Mr. Mystery's property other than the one block to the west. I think it was mentioned earlier, but to the north is the Black Hills property, so there's a transmission line there. So, I mean, I don't think there's development anticipated there in the near future. And I think those were the primary reasons why we just wanted to point out that the purpose really of that 25-foot road easement probably doesn't exist anymore. Penrose Water District did write in and comment that it might like to keep that road easement in place, but as I mentioned, it's not for utilities, it's only for road purposes. And there's already a 10-foot utility easement on that north boundary in the 1997 plat, and there will be in this replat. So there's a place for utilities on that north boundary. I guess also, if you go to the next slide, it shows that the Penrose Water, oh, I'm sorry, this is a letter that's, I think, in the record that I wrote kind of outlining what I've just stated with regard to Penrose Water District's comment. And then the next slide should be.
Can you back up just a little bit?
Oh, sure.
You said there is a place for the utilities. It's
Yes.
not in that 25-foot easement, or it is?
So actually on this north boundary on the 97 plat, I believe it's a 10-foot utility easement on that boundary, and there'll be the same easement on the replat.
Is that easement on the south side of the property line there between Black Hills? I don't see it on the plat.
Well, I think it's back on the 97 plat. And as a requirement of your regulations, there has to be a 10-foot utility easement called out on the boundaries. So I believe it's called out in the plat.
It is on the preliminary plan, yes.
The preliminary plan, excuse me.
Okay, I'm sorry. Keep on going. We'll come back to that.
Commissioner Grantham, it may be in the notes and not labeled on the plat as well. But
Okay.
it is a requirement, and it was there in 97 and will be in this replat. And then again, the Penrose Water District boundaries don't go north of Mr. Mystery's property. So, I mean, it will have a utility easement there to use if it needs it, but we don't see the need for it when there's nothing to the north for it to serve. And Penrose Water District will have an easement in Margarita Way to serve these lots. So that easement has already been negotiated and signed by all the parties, ready for recording when the plat is approved. So that's all I have on the request for the vacation of the 20-foot road easement. I could stop if anyone has questions on that piece.
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. So the next thing that I've been asked to address is comments in the staff report related to the width and depth dimensions of the lots. The 4 northern lots are wedge lots. By the regulations, for wedge lots, there's a building setback line that you can faintly see that has to start at the minimum width for a lot in this zone district, which is 300 feet. So each of the wedge lots has a building setback line where it is 300 feet wide. And if you measure depth from that line, all but one of the lots is compliant. The chart on this slide is the staff report's calculation of depth from the point, like the tip of the pie, to the farthest boundary. And if you measure it that way, the depth is more than twice the width. If you go to the next slide, if you measure the depth from the building setback line, then all of the lots are conforming except lot 2, which is slightly deeper than twice the width. The regulations don't call out the measurement that way specifically, but it seems like if you're setting the minimum width at the building setback line, it makes sense to then calculate the depth from that same line. And I believe that's how flag lots are calculated. So that would be analogous, I think, in this situation. And then I guess the last point to make is this particular regulation says whenever possible. So it isn't, whenever possible. It's not a shall be required. And then finally, the last thing I was asked to address is accessing onto public right-of-way. So there is a regulation that says that residential lots should access on public right-of-way, and there's a waiver. The staff report suggests a waiver request for both 3 and 4. Lot 3 actually fronts on 3rd Street, so it's on a public right-of-way, so I'm not real clear why we would need a waiver for Lot 3. Lot 4 could front on L Street, as Dr. Bellantoni described, but the design through the many configurations has resulted in these pie-shaped lots that access onto Margarita Way, which is a private gated street, but there is a perpetual access easement that connects it to 3rd Street, which is a public right-of-way. Dr. Ballantoni went through all the reasons why paying for development of L Street and even Second Street really doesn't seem practical in this situation or economically feasible, so I'm not going to go through that again. But I can talk a little bit about the access easement and servitude agreement, if that would be helpful. This is pieces and parts of it, but I think the things that are important are lots 4, 5, 6, and 7. So the top pie-shaped lots would use Margarita Way to access onto 3rd Street. Lot 3 accesses onto 3rd Street. Lot 1 onto 3rd Street. I'm sorry, Lot 2, and then Lot 1 has the option to access either directly onto 3rd or from Margarita Way. So the access easement and servitude documents puts an easement on all of the properties for the 50-foot wide Margarita Way, meaning that property owners own their property. It's simply subject to an easement. It has provisions in it related to shared expenses, pro rata. It has remedies if there is a particular lot owner who decides not to pay his pro rata share. The other lot owners can lien the property to collect the money owed for repairs and expenses. Maintenance includes snow removal, which I think is important. And I guess the last thing about these types of agreements, which I've used from time to time on similar developments, is, the lot owners have the motivation, right, to keep the street repaired, the snow shoveled, so they can access their own lots, which I think builds that sort of mutual, what's the word, not cooperation, but motivation to keep the road maintained as it should be. And it permits it to be gated and private and kind of go towards the intent of Mr. Mystery of creating this type of higher end subdivision. Any questions about that document? No? Okay. And then finally, the last slide is just some bullet points responding to the staff report's recommendation of denial. And I think it's just sort of a summary of what we've gone through a little bit here. We believe the transportation goals of the county are met by this project. 3rd Street can accommodate the increased trips that will come from Margarita Way, which would be the same amount of trips that would come from L Street if L Street were built. Margarita Way is going to be constructed to county standards for local streets. It's 50-foot wide and gravel, and that is also called out in that access easement and servitudes document as a requirement. And L Street and 2nd Street remain the same as they are today. So no increased burden on the county for paying for maintenance of those roads because they won't be developed. We went through the width versus length configuration and measurement discussion. And as we said before, the county road network remains unchanged. Utilities are provided for in the proposed plan, and the fire department has accepted the design. So with that, turn it back to you for conclusions, or Hoshi.
So in conclusion, and I believe there is a slide. This is just Chief Ritter's, our dialogue we had, and he finally approved everything, his concerns. We can go to the next slide. And in conclusion, we respectfully request approval of Mr. Hoshi's subdivision configuration. It's a gated community. The access and servitudes document provides for private access and also prepares a way to maintain Margarita Way, which is a gravel road built to county standards. We're also requesting the vacation of the 25-foot road easement, but there is a 10-foot utility easement, and it's on the plan on the north, to your comment, Commissioner Grantham. And according to the traffic engineer, 3rd Street can accommodate easily 66 without any improvements to it. And then lastly, again, we do not concur the need to re-notify the utilities. They've been involved in this and were notified for this configuration a year ago as required by the application.
So I guess back to my question on the 10-foot utility easement. Is that contained within the 25-foot? Or is it north of that on the Black Hills property? Or?
Currently, I believe the 25-foot, there is no 25-foot in Black Hills.
I know.
Okay, so there's only 25-foot in, on Mr. Mysteries. And the 10-foot, the 25-foot, allegedly there's an agreement with DOT and Penrose Water District, which we have requested the agreement and haven't received it. So with the vacation of the 25, the 10-foot is in its place for utility development as required by code.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Any questions?
Not at this time.
No, I don't have a question. I do have a comment, though. I think we got to be careful when we vacate easements. There was an example up there where there was a section of 2nd Street, and then one had been vacated on one side and one on the other side. I think that limits the potential future growth. That Black Hills property above there will probably be sold. Black Hills bought it to get their power line in, I take it, and it will probably be sold and developed. And by vacating that, you're almost hamstringing them where it might not work as well. So I just caution with that easement on that part being vacated.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We'll get to a point where we'll have public input on this. At this point, we will turn to, I believe, our staff.
Carrie.
And to Carrie McCool for her comments. Thank you.
Microphone.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm doing the casting. Tony is our...
Magic is about to happen.
Show up. Okay, we did it. Good. Good morning, everybody. Commissioners, Carrie McCool for Planning and Zoning Department staff. The application that you have today on your agenda is a request for preliminary plan approval to subdivide a little over 33.65 acres into 7 single-family residential lots. The applicant is also requesting to vacate a 25-foot road easement that was dedicated to Fremont County for roadway. And there are 2 waiver requests. The first is a waiver request from the design standards that requires lots to front on public streets. And the second is a waiver to develop Margarita Way to county standards. I did include this in the staff report, as this request was never withdrawn back in September 13th. This is the waiver request letter that I took this language and included in the staff report, but it doesn't appear that that waiver would be required because the applicant has agreed in the latest submittal to construct Margarita Way to county standards. So it's important to talk about the background of this property in context. It was originally 40.16 acres, and it was subdivided into 2 residential lots, and that was back in 1997. Lot 1 was the 33.65 acres, and then there was another Lot 2 that has actually been developed as a single-family residential property, and it is not included in the subdivision that you have before you today. Additionally, at that time, there was 25 feet of right-of-way that was dedicated for 3rd Street and for L Street. And there was also the 25-foot roadway, road easement along the northern boundary of the property. Oops, hit too fast. Why is my mouse not working? What is this this red dot here for? But my cursor is not working. Okay. I do not understand why this cursor is not working. Okay. Is there a way to? Is your computer a touchscreen? No. And it was, I don't know if there's some connection with other devices. Your cursor's there. Can you see my cursor?
Yeah, yeah. It's on the bottom.
Bottom line.
There you go. Okay. So it's important to note that back in 1997, that road right-of-way and road easements were dedicated back then. So the applicant is intending to re-subdivide this 33-acre parcel into 7 lots. He wants to sell 6 single-family residential lots, and those range in size from like 5.1, 4.51 to 4.96. And he is proposing to retain about 5.51 acres for his existing residence. No improvements are proposed along L Street and all lots with access onto 3rd Street. And they're proposing the construction of a private road, Margarita Way, and a gate to be maintained by the future lot owners, excluding Mr. Mystery's new Lot 2 and Lot 3. So overall, through this, the development review process, there have been a number of challenges in that there's been several different lot configurations, and those lot configurations had changed based on, county staff and referral agencies and districts providing comments, and the applicant addressing those comments. So basically, we've had 4 resubmittals, we've had 3 formal submittals, and at the last round of review, the the staff had shared our draft staff report to the Planning Commission, which recommended denial because of the issues that we'll be discussing in further detail. And at the last minute, the applicant decided, you know what, we want to go ahead with the May 2nd Planning Commission hearing, and we'll see what the Planning Commission decides. And so staff quickly compiled everything and sent the application to the Planning Commission. And You know, there wasn't time in all of that process well, let me back up. The applicant, a little bit before that, had been coordinating directly with the water district and, you know, the referral agencies to address comments, and staff was getting, just doing everything via email. And so, like, for example, Penrose Water District comments, that triggered a revision. The lot layout didn't change, but, you know, the notes and things that they needed on the preliminary plan had changed, and things of that nature. And so staff had just recommended, since there's a lot of communication and email correspondence that affected easements and these types of things, that it would be appropriate to resend it out to do the public utility notices, especially considering the notice that was sent out like a year before. So from a staff perspective, you know, it's the special districts, and you know, it's their call if they have any issue with a plat note or, you know, whatever. And so we just found that it would be good measure for all of those agencies to have a second look. So with the final configuration and all the notes and easements and agreements and whatnot. So with preliminary plans, the criteria for approval is conformance with the Fremont County Master Plan, also conformance with the zoning resolution, as well as conformance with the subdivision design standards that are found in Appendix 1 of the subdivision regulations. So the subject property is located within the Penrose Beaver Park District, and the objectives pursuant to your master plan are to maintain the rural character, rural atmosphere of the area. The applicant is proposing a density of 0.21 dwelling units per acre, which is an appropriate density to maintain that, you know, rural feel. This subdivision will be served by public water, and that's in conformance and would implement the master plan strategy B1.5, which discourages further subdivision of properties without access to a public water supply. And the proposed lots, they all exceed the 4.5 acres and are large enough to accommodate on-site septic. So throughout the development review process, staff has raised concerns with conformance related mainly to transportation. Although the property's boundaries, although the property's western boundary is L Street, and the applicant's proposed lot configuration to have all lots onto 3rd Street and not on L Street. We understand that proposal, but the master plan does set forth, and it talks about that developers, for new county roads in undeveloped areas, that the developers should be prepared to address construction, funding, and maintenance of those road improvements on and off-site needed to serve their development. And essentially, new development should really pay its way and mitigate any impacts from that development. So through the process as well, we took a look at your master plan strategy A6.5, which really states that applicants, when they're requesting a relocation or vacation of easements that would have the potential to impact emergency services in their jurisdiction, that we reach out to them and talk to them about the proposal. And so staff did that, and we reached out to the Florence Fire Protection District, and specifically talked about the proposal to not make any improvements on L Street and the proposed vacation of the road easement on the northern boundary. During those discussions, the fire district and the fire district has provided a lot of this in email too, and it has been included in your packet, that the fire chief Ritter noted that there were some community safety concerns due to a structure fire in the area, and it was recent at that time. I think it was back in October, they responded to a large structure fire, and it was just to the west of the proposed development on 2nd and K Street. And they really had a hard time fighting that fire because of the condition of L Street. And I've been on that road, and it is a little tough. And so when you have an emergency, it's super, super important to have a street network that is navigable by emergency responders. So with that, considering the community safety concerns, staff, and the fact that L Street right-of-way exists and the road easement exists, that improvements to L Street should be made in order to achieve the county's the only transportation goal, which is to create and maintain a safe, functional, aesthetically pleasing, low-maintenance, cost-effective, and environmentally sound county-wide transportation system. So we'll move on to the zoning resolution, compliance with the zoning resolution. The subject property is zoned AR Ag Rural, wherein single-family dwellings are allowed use by right, and along with accessory structures and uses as well. As you can see, the property is surrounded by AR zoning. Okay, so it's really important to note that development in the area could happen in conformance with the AR zone district, which it could all be subdivided into 4.5 acre lots, right? So the staff found that the preliminary plan was in substantial conformance with the zoning resolution relating to minimum lot area, maximum lot coverage, maximum building height, minimum lot width, as well as parking. There were some issues with setbacks. The lots 1, 3, and 4 through 7 are adequate size for future homeowners to comply with the setbacks. However, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, is that even though these lots would be over 4.5 acres, there's non-buildable area identified. There's and that's based on the wedge-shaped lots that we've been discussing, and there's also a significant no-build area on lot 1. And then you add the other setback requirements for side and rear. The actual buildable area of the lot turns out to be pretty small, and might limit the ability of folks to have accessory structures that is really in character with what is found out in this area. But again, the plan that has been provided does show that they would that all lots would conform to the setback. The exception is Lot 2. The plan shows an existing livestock shade shelter that's in the 25-foot setback. The applicant has noted that they will remove that shade structure, and staff just continues to recommend that if this is approved, just it might be a good idea to have a contingency, make sure that there's triggers for when that needs to be happen. Like typically it's, you know, at time of the final plat recordation, so that that won't be an issue. So staff found that the proposed lot configuration was in general conformance with the lot standards, with the exception of fronting on a public street and the lot depths. We, and as the applicant had indicated too, there have been a number of versions of the preliminary plan that have that we have reviewed, and there is really inherent interplay between the lot standards as they relate to triggers for roadway improvements. And again, that's really from a staff's perspective, from what we were seeing, is that's seemed to have triggered a lot of these proposed changes. And so what I'd like to do is walk through each of these versions of the preliminary plan, so you can kind of see the chronology. So the first version, the layout characteristics, it had 7 substantially rectangular lots, and there were 4 lots that had frontage on L Street and Margarita Way, off of L Street, and Margarita Way was proposed as a private road. And I should also take the opportunity to point out that this version was a version that was sent on the first notice to public utilities, for the public notice, and staff received the version 2 that we're gonna show, and that so there was all this confusion very early on in the process that, wait a minute, we're getting comment, you know, the referral agencies, you know, the utility providers were confused, we were confused, you know, because there was 2 different versions that went out. And that's another reason why I think it's really important that, you know, for, you know, utilities, making sure that the county knows exactly what what plans are being reviewed, because they're common, we need to know. So that was why that was basically an issue. So at that time, CDOT was requiring, or FCDOT was requiring L Street to be brought up to county standards for a local road from 3rd to 2nd Street. Margarita Way was required to be built to county standards. And then we have the second version, and this had, again, substantially rectangular lots. 3 of the lots had frontage on L Street, and this is a version that had the cul-de-sac, reverse L cul-de-sac that exceeded the 750 foot limitation. And so with this application, the applicant submitted a waiver to front on public streets for lots 6 and 7. They wanted a waiver for the development of Margarita Way to county standards, and there was also a waiver for development of L Street from Margarita Way to 2nd Street. So when staff received this version, even though the referral period wasn't over, staff reached out, sent a courtesy email, and said, "Hope, you know, there's a kind of a fatal flaw in this one because of the cul-de-sac length in that configuration." And so the applicant did go back to
the drawing board. And then so we have preliminary plan version 3, and this is where we first started seeing the wedge-shaped lot layout. There was a realignment of Margarita Way to access onto 3rd Street versus L Street. That was when we heard Margarita Way would be a private gravel road. And the length of the cul-de-sac was actually in conformance with our standards for cul-de-sac width. And so the waiver requests that we received were the front on a public streets for lots 3 and 4 and development of Margarita Way to county standards. And so that was the last waiver that we had received. So during this time, you know, the staff had met with the applicant. I think it was sometime in July. We talked about with this design, the lack of conformance with the design standards, with the wedge-shaped lots, fronting on a public street, the lot depth and requirements, and street improvements. The county's been pretty consistent that Margarita Way must be built to county standards. The DOT director was really concerned about the buried irrigation line lateral, needs to have adequate support, adequate cover to provide support to the vehicles. The roadway impact analysis that we received at that time only estimated 20, I think it was like 28 trips per day. And so the director was like, well, we're thinking that it's probably 2.5 times, you know, that. And so that was a concern. And the Department of Transportation's just been, you know, really consistent about not supporting the lot frontage waiver, adjacent roadway, any adjacent roadways. You know, they have the potential to obtain an access permit, and because of the criteria for which the department issues access permits. And so the last version, comments were issued, and then we got this last version 4, and the applicant, same wedge-shaped lots configuration on the northern side. The building setbacks were, the building setback lines were delineated, and no-build areas were also delineated. And as you can see from this graphic, I just highlighted where the no-build areas are and where the setbacks are as well. So there is a lot of, like most of lot 3 is not buildable. Lot 2 has some very odd configuration and a non-buildable area kind of in the center of it. But like I was mentioning before, although the future homeowners could comply with setbacks, but you need to consider that the side setbacks would be 25 feet and rear setbacks would be 50 feet. So the actual these homes, they might be able to, you know, accommodate, you know, maybe a house and a small shed, or maybe a garage, you know, I don't know, it's everybody's preference. But what I see in the area is that a lot of these properties have very nice homes with accessory structures and sheds and those types of things. And in this subdivision, I think it'll be really a bit challenging for them to have any kind of accessory structure that you would typically find in a rural setting. Not to mention, I don't envy Dan's job when building permits come in, because you have to, you know, make sure that you have to look at the plat in order to issue a building permit. So let's talk a little bit about the issue with fronting on public streets. So while the latest configuration of Margarita Way was set forth to avoid the costs of the required improvements, access could be permitted along L Street as a criteria for a driveway access permit, as I pointed out. And that access needs, all it needs is to connect to an existing right-of-way or have an easement. I understand that the applicant had objected to the text in the staff report that states it, that that due to the substantial costs that they're they're objecting to referencing that costs had a factor in the evaluation or in their design. And I do want to take a moment to point out that, back in the September 16, 2022 submittal, in the applicant's cover letter by Dr. Bellantoni, she specifically states that she met with the fire chief, and he initially had concerns about their code requires certain spacing of the fire hydrant locations, and so because of the configuration of Margarita Way and whatnot, the fire district was like, we need more fire hydrants, and so the applicant did great and reach out to the district, and they came up with this current configuration, and the letter states, right, due to substantial costs for the recommended improvements, we propose realigning Margarita Way to access onto 3rd Street rather than L Street. So I got that information from the applicant, and I just wanted to point that out for the record. The right-of-way for L Street was dedicated for the future build-out of the road when the Mystery subdivision was approved. I mean, that's very clear. It was dedicated. Staff finds that the public right-of-way exists, providing the property owner the ability to configure lots that will have lot frontage along public roadways in compliance with the design standards. The Department of Transportation continues to not support the lot waiver request due to adjacent roadways that had the potential to access on any point at any lots, and that will need to be brought up to county standards. So in terms of lot depth, this didn't become too much of an issue until we'll call it the wedge-shaped design of these, the northern lots. And the first round of review comments, we had pointed out to the applicant, hey, you need to, here's what the code requires, tell us how your design is going to be in conformance with the design standards in terms of lot depth, meaning provide us dimensions, how you're measuring it, all of these good things, because the depth of the lot shall not be greater than twice the width. And we also said, and this is also included in your packet, that our comments were like, if it's not possible, let us know why it's not possible. It's typical, like, if it's not possible, maybe there's steep topography or there's floodplain encumbrance or, something like that, why it's not possible. The response that we got from the applicant was, we're gonna measure the lot depth like this, and they said this is per the code, and we really scoured the code and we're like, where is this definition, and couldn't find it. So it was, from a staff's perspective, it was like this wasn't going to be addressed, and then we moved forward to Planning Commission, and here we are today. So
Now the applicant has provided a table that showed the, how they're dimensioning lot width and, lot depth. And it might work. We haven't had a detailed review of how they're doing that or reviewed the plans. But there's still one lot that would not meet the lot depth requirements. And I didn't hear from the applicant what the rationale for not meeting that. So it's just something to note. It is true that the requirement does say wherever possible. So access has been a key issue throughout the development review process. Again, when the mystery subdivision was approved back in, 97, right? So that's what, 26 years ago. 20-foot right-of-way was dedicated for L Street, was dedicated for 3rd Street, and the 25-foot road easement was dedicated on the northern boundary of the site. So the September 16th submittal that we received proposed that realignment to have everything access onto 3rd Street versus L Street, and the revised, and it had the revised configuration, the 4 wedge-shaped lots. And again, we heard that this design was set forth to reduce the number of fire hydrants that were required and to reduce the costs of recommended improvements from the Department of Transportation. Then January 10th, we received a resubmittal, and this is the submittal where it was clarified lot 3 will have access 3rd Street directly. Lot 1 may access 3rd Street directly. Lot 4 and 7 and possibly 1 will have access from 3rd Street from a gated and private road, Margarita Way. And Margarita Way was going to be constructed as a private road to county standards, and all lots except 2 and 3 are required. Unless and I might be reading the access easement and servitude incorrectly, but it seems to me that all the lots except 2 and 3 are required to maintain the private road and the gate. So that's.
When we're talking about lot 2 in that context.
Microphone.
Yeah, so lot 2 would be Mr. Hoshi's
The
lot.
original one over on the,
Yeah,
on
so.
the southeast corner.
So
Okay.
it doesn't appear to me, and the applicant can correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't appear to me that he is I think he's responsible for maybe installation of the gate, and then all the maintenance and, the roadway, like, he's not responsible for any of that. So, but per the design standards, all lots created by a subdivision shall have lot frontage along a public roadway unless it's exempted from conditions set forth in the design criteria for private roads. Again, the western boundary of the property is L Street, and it is a public road. The last resubmittal, again, CDOT found that an access permit for Margarita Way for those lots 4, 5, 6, and 7 will need to be submitted. Margarita Way will be built to county standards. There was still no support for the lot frontage waiver, and the fire district did accept the roadway construction and maintenance and property access denied from L Street, which is proposed to be accessed by, or delineated by a note on the plan. So
Planning, Department of Transportation, and the Fire District, we've all noted concerns with the impacts of not constructing L Street to county standards. I understand that it's difficult to not see that, not have a vision, for the future that this area could look very different. And so what we have to look to is really the zoning that would allow development to occur in this area, and what would be required for, providing adequate emergency response and fighting fires and providing for utilities and those types of things. The proposed density, along with the AR zoning, it would have an impact on the county's road network. Properties could be developed as 4.5 acres, just like they're proposed in the Mystery subdivision, just like what's being proposed here. I should also note that the comment in regards to if we don't have the requirements for upgrades to infrastructure roads at the time that the development happens, when you have a request, there's really no trigger that the county has to go back in time and go, whoops, someone to the north wants to develop, and L Street's in its current condition, they would be required to dedicate right away. They would be required to put in a road. And then there's gonna be this section of L Street that is gonna, be the way that it is. And so that's what I was talking about in my staff report, is that the things that trigger improvements are the densities and development, and it has to happen at the time of the development. It can't happen retrospectively. And so if development happens north, L Street remains in its, current configuration, that's difficult to traverse on, then there's going to be development in the area that needs those roads to be maintained, to be brought up to standards, and it could possibly, there's nobody else that could bring it up to standards to create a safe roadway network. I would think it would fall on the county. So it's a huge long range issue, and it's unfortunately there's costs that are associated with the development of land. The only new street that's proposed is the Margarita Way cul-de-sac. The cul-de-sac is in conformance with the maximum length limitation of 750 feet, meets the radiuses. The Department of Transportation and the Fire District raised concerns about how Margarita Way private drive accesses Beaver Park Inc.'s buried lateral line to serve Lot 2. And again, the concerns are making sure that there's adequate cover and they could support emergency vehicles. And the applicant did revise their plans and included the required detail. As such, staff finds that the engineering drawings are address all of the applicants, all of the counties and districts' concerns. It's interesting, your code has provisions for other design standards, and it talks about making sure that all streets shall be aligned to join with planned or existing streets. And I think I don't know how long this code provision has been in place, but I bet you it's been
since 1997, because that is exactly what was required of the Mystery subdivision. The first filing was to provide the street connectivity. The property is bounded by these existing easements. It has surrounded right-of-way, and as such, the street shall be built to the county standards, and the road easement should be maintained to allow with Second Street, right? Because Second Street goes to the west, and providing that Second Street extension could also help with, provision of utilities as well as emergency response, and those types of things. In terms of utilities, the applicant, again, has worked well with the Penrose Water District. Their proposal did require significant distribution system improvements. The district did require an easement agreement for the water line installation and meters, as well as to protect the district's ability to maintain and repair that line. It's our understanding that the board has approved that easement agreement, but it needs to be properly executed and recorded. We haven't seen a copy of that, the final one, or maybe we have seen the final one, it's just not the recorded one. And the environmental health found that the lot sizes are adequate to accommodate septic. The Division of Water Resources, they were sent to, the 3 referrals, and they indicated the proposed water supply for residential use can be provided without causing injury to their water rights, and the supply that they noted is adequate. But the division did have they made repeated comments that they really required review of the information about how the owner is proposing to use the Beaver Park water shares. Specifically, I can't remember her name now, but the gal at the division, she said specifically, are they splitting the shares between the lots, or will they be keeping the shares and decreasing the irrigated area? These comments have been passed along to the applicant, and the applicant has not addressed them yet. So we really think that it's important for the applicant to get it might not be an issue, but the Division of Water Resources is requesting resolve at that issue. And I can understand how it could be an issue, with irrigation water, and Mr. Mystery owns all of that. How is that all going to work with those shares? So I understand how that could be a concern. The irrigation water is Beaver Park Water Inc., and that's the ditch company that provides water from Beaver Creek to approximately 500 stakeholders in the Penrose area. They provide irrigation water for the subject property to the developer, who is also a Beaver Park water stockholder. And the irrigation water is delivered via an open ditch, that Kelly ditch, that runs through the proposed lot 4 to irrigate proposed lots 1, 2, and 3. Kelly ditch is required to be maintained by the property owner. Beaver Park owns a pre-existing easement for this irrigation line along L and the L Street lateral, located in the county right-of-way. And there's also a buried line that goes to Apple Valley that runs across the property, and Mr. Urs noted that too. To address the Beaver Park's comments, the March resubmittal did include the revised plans that accurately depicted the BPW1I easements, the irrigation pipe protection detail that they needed, And there's some plan notes that their attorney had that they needed to be placed on the plans to ensure protection of their stockholders. And these, the superintendent, so all of those issues have been resolved. The only thing was that the superintendent at the district, he requested that we include that pipe protection detail in the preliminary plan set, which is easy to do. In terms of utilities, fire protection, the applicant is installing 2 fire hydrants. The fire district did raise concerns about the private driveway serving multiple residences, and it will have a greater impact on traffic flow, like if there's just single driveways there. And his concern too is, you know, maintenance, wear and tear on that Margarita Way. Who's gonna take care of that? Because this happens a lot apparently, is you know, private roads aren't maintained, and then they have to go out for a call, and they're dealing with very challenging roads. So the applicant is proposing access easement and servitudes, and again, I'm really not clear on the mechanism for funding of the needed cost, and the county cannot, we do not enforce covenants or servitudes. So what happens between property owners, it's we would be out of that. So last but not least, the 25-foot road easement vacation request. So this was brought up at the pre-application meeting that we had way back when, and at that time, and Dr. Bellantoni provided it on her slide, is we had we noted that any vacation request will be reviewed through the subdivision process, right? And typically, you know, just make a note that that's what you want to do, and we will review it. At no time did staff say that we would recommend, and nor do we have the authority to say that we would approve the vacation of a road easement. That road easement has been a bone of contention throughout the development review process. I don't remember, and maybe we could talk to Tony about it, but I don't remember county staff or any departments requiring that that the road easement be constructed, or that the road be constructed. I think everybody's been really consistent with there's no reason to vacate this road easement. It's prohibiting development in the area, and we have consistently raised concerns about, you know, connectivity to future development, provisions for utilities, and community safety. The water district supports retaining the road easement for future use for utilities, and I understand the applicant has noted that the Mystery subdivision property is on the northern boundary of the water district's service area boundaries, and that is very true. In talking with the district engineer, or I can't remember Ron's title, but he had indicated that, and he confirmed, yep, that's true, you know, our boundaries, you know, where it is shown. However, we just received an inquiry, and at that time he said like 3 months ago, of a person wanting to develop, subdivide a portion of the Black Hills property, and they were requesting service and would like to be petitioned into their district.
for service. So even though the district boundaries are set now, there is a process that the district has to annex folks into their districts, and they have the requirements for that and whatnot. So there is interest in the area to develop pursuant to the zoning, which is for 4.5 acre lots. I have heard too that the Black Hills folks, they are looking towards, or if they haven't already, carving up their parcels, right? And they have the zoning to do so. And so the Department of Transportation has consistently not supported the vacation of 2nd Street. It's also the county standard practice to have utilities in roadways. And that's typical for most jurisdictions. And although the road easement doesn't specifically say that it is for utilities, I'm sure that if the need arose, that the county would work with the district and make sure that they get their needs met to install the utilities that they need. And the Ron at the Water District, he is still searching for the agreement. He's of the opinion that there was an agreement that the county had with the district that all that they can install utilities in roads and road rights of way. So, but again, I think the county would work with any landowner to make sure that there's adequate provisions for utilities. Fire districts continue to raise concerns stemming from, the limited ability to fight fires in the area. Again, the planning commission, the planning and zoning department, we have continued to not support the vacation of 2nd Street. I understand it's really hard to see or think about development happening in the area, but if we start vacating road rights of way that were put there for a reason, somebody had a vision at that time, it was in conformance with your regs at that time, that there could be potential development to 4.5 acre lots. If you vacate that, then there's none. Then it really stymies development. There is, people sell their property, people subdivide their property, people combine their lots, people, petition to be in water districts, like all of those things. The really key driver is what is the zoning and what is the county's vision for that area, and that zoning is representative of that. And in vacating 2nd Street would really present, it would eliminate, folks from doing exactly what Mr. Mystery would like to do, is carve up their lots, carve up his properties in 4.5 acre lots. And the vacation would eliminate the possibility of conformance with the subdivision design standards that would require all streets to be aligned with planned streets. Again, the applicant's requesting the vacation of the existing easement, because they just feel like there's no development in the area, and it's just not likely based on the owners and the topography. And again, it's important to look at the zoning, the vision for the future, the needs of the county residents for adequate roadways. As such, the staff is, I mean, we, planning and zoning department, we have continued to not support the vacation of 2nd Street. Again, the Department of Transportation has not supported the vacation of 2nd Street.
you know, if granted, it would basically eliminate the ability of Penrose Water to install or maintain utilities. It would limit connectivity to future development in the area and presents community safety issues related to fire protection. So this project went to the Planning Commission in a public meeting on May 2nd, and the Planning Commission voted to approve it 6-0. And also approval of vacating the road easement with no findings of fact and for contingencies. And those contingencies included removal of the livestock shed that was in the site setbacks, addressing the Division of Water Resources comments from April 7th. And actually we were hoping that the applicant would be able to do that prior to the Board of County Commissioners meeting, but that did not happen. Incorporate the BPWI board approved irrigation pipe protection details and all of that good stuff in the preliminary plan approval document, and properly record, execute and record the water district easement that was approved by the district back in February. The Planning Commission also recommended granting of the waiver from the subdivision design standards, Appendix 1B, lot standards 4 on public streets, and recommended granting of a waiver from the development of Margarita Way to county standards, which we all know that the applicant has now agreed to build the road to county standards. So staff's recommendation is consistent with what was presented at Planning Commission. Based on the application and the criteria for approval, staff was recommended denial of the preliminary plan, the 25-foot road easement, vacation request, and the waivers in regards to fronting on a public street, finding that it's not consistent with the transportation goals of the county of the Fremont County Master Plan. The proposal is not in conformance with the subdivision design standards as set forth in the subdivision regulations, and the proposed subdivision design would negatively impact development of a continuous integrated network of county roadways and present community safety issues related to fire protection, while also limiting the planning for adequate utility provisions. And so with that, I'd be able to answer any questions that the board may have.
Okay. Carrie? Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
Any questions?
I've got a question, Mr. Chair.
Please.
So, Carrie, just for clarification, I think Dr. Bellantoni asked about why there were other notices being requested sent out. And I think you said it's because there weren't notices sent out for the final plan of this thing. It was sent out to the prior plans. Am I getting that correct?
Well, the version that went out was, well, the public utility notice happened twice, like very early on when we had a snafu about the lot configuration. And then the second one went out in September of 2022, like a whole year ago. And so since that, even though the general like concept of the lot layout didn't change much, there were things that did change, like notes, easement notes and the pipe protection details, and these types of things were added in the preliminary plan. And that final plan was not sent to the public utilities.
As well as coming off of 3rd Street rather than L Street? Our packet's 458 pages long. So there's a lot of information to look through, and there's several maps, and they all change, just like we've seen. So
yeah, they do, and that's another reason why it's just like good measure. I do know that the referral agencies and the utility providers, they did express frustration about how they were being noticed and, you know, how this was all working and what are they really proposing, and staff has a different version of the, you know, all of this. And so reason why I noted that in the staff report is really the final version that has all the easements and has all, you know, everything identified. It just would be good measure. I don't know if the water district would have a conflict with Beaver Park water, like, I don't know, but what I would hate to do is some note or whatever is placed on the plan that conflicts with what they're doing. But the applicant has worked with, you know, the water district. They've been coordinating directly, and they have been working with Beaver Park and those types of things. So I would just want to make that clear for the record too. I'm aware of that, so that's a good thing.
Thank you.
Not at this time.
Carrie, I just want to try to distill this down, and at least as far as from the staff perspective on the issues that are still at issue here when it comes to the 25-foot easement, when it comes to the improvement of L Street. Margarita Way has kind of been addressed already as far as it being improved up to county standards. What's left at odds for the fire district?
Well, the fire district, although they have like big picture concerns, they have signed off on the proposed configuration, the fire hydrant placement, whatnot, and with a plat note that, you know, there'd be no access on L Street. So I think from a staff perspective, the unresolved issues are, you know, lot frontage.
Is that mostly to do with the pie-shaped lots?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and there are, you know, a number of different ways, and it's not our role to design anybody's, you know, subdivision. All we can do is say, does it comply or does it not? But it's a, you know, relatively flat piece of property that has very little site constraints. It does have the right-of-way and the easements to lay out a subdivision that works, right, and that is effective. And you know, again, from a staff perspective, you know, vacating that road, the road easement, I mean, I think that it wouldn't be in conformance with, you know, our regulations and the vision for the future.
Just as far as a question on that easement, if the easement stayed in place and it's 25 foot in from the property line, and the back setback is what, 50 foot?
Mm-hmm.
So is that a 75 foot effective, or is
No.
it 25 and 25? Okay.
Right, right. And that's another thing too with the, and I kind of touched on it before, you know, although the setback requirements can be met, you know, having the lot configuration with this wedge-shaped lot and the no-build areas, and then you add on the, you know, the setback requirements, those lots, even though they're 4.5 acres, I mean, they're really, folks are gonna be able to use one or two, I mean, you know, I don't know. I haven't run those numbers. But the request to not front on a public, not front on a public street have been so that there wouldn't be a trigger for, the improvements on L Street. And so that's why I was saying there's really an interplay between your code requirements, what's outlined in your subdivision standards to,
So
long-range vision
I guess just
improvements.
I just want to make sure that, distilling all of this down, we've been at this for nearly 2 hours, and we've still got a little ways to go. I just want to make sure, as far as our conversation goes here, that we're talking about that 25-foot. We're talking about L Street. We're talking about the
Lot frontage.
the depth and frontage issues that I just want to get it distilled down. The fire district, I think we pretty much addressed those things.
Yep.
Margarita Way has been addressed to the extent. Obviously, the frontage issue probably plays into that a little bit because of the cul-de-sac, but I just want to make sure, am I missing something on that? And those, getting it distilled down to those things.
Yeah, and a lot of the design of this latest configuration is based on the board's approval of the lot frontage waiver.
Gotcha.
And so, it might be good to, provide the applicant and the design team, direction and concern, and maybe we could table this and come up with a revised design.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Okay. I think at this time, we are in a public hearing, and I think we'll open it up now for our public comment, those that have signed up. And I've got a stack of papers here. And I will just go in order for those that wish to address the board on this issue. And first on the list here is Rob Brown with FEDC. Now, just encourage folks as you avail yourselves of this opportunity to address the board directly, whether you're for or against, and address us directly and keep your comments succinct and to the point.
Thank you very much. I was going to say good morning, but now it's going to be good afternoon. Esteemed Board of Commissioners, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. We refer to this project internally as Project Buffett in honor of the late Miss Minstry, and I think I just wanted to make sure that that I let the board know how proud I am to be able to be participating in the process of local government, and thank you very much for you guys and the work that you do on behalf of our community. And when you see somebody like Steve Larson here investing 25 years of his life on behalf of us citizens, I'm very, very proud to be here. This is an increasingly rare opportunity to push forward a project for residential development in our community. So I'm clearly in favor of this project. And I'm also very confident that Hoshi has done a tremendous job of assembling a team of people from our community that live here, work here, and their reputations are dependent on the advice that they're providing on this particular project. So he has spent countless hours and thousands of dollars to put this package together to bring it forward. Economic development and economic resiliency is dependent on what I refer to as the three-legged stool. You have to have transportation, you have to have daycare, and you have to have housing. And right now in our community, there is an extremely low number of buildable lots in this area. And this is an opportunity to do an infill development in Penrose, which is clearly one of the more disadvantaged communities when it comes to those available lots. And it's a very, very fine balance between having the exact perfect design and the funding necessary to pull it off. And so you have to consolidate those things into a plan that is financially feasible to do. And that's where we frequently run aground on these projects, is that the developer finds out exactly how challenging the process is. But if he or she pursues the process, then they get to that point where they find out how economically challenging it is to get to this point. And I think your candidate, your applicant, has done everything he can possibly do to this point to participate in the process and produce a project that has real merit and value to our community. So I would encourage you to approve this project, potentially with conditions, but move this thing forward so we can continue to attract those people to our community that are going to help be taxpayers and add value to our community going forward. So those are my thoughts.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next, we have Colleen Ryan.
Hi, I also was going to say good morning, but I can't go. I live about a mile from Hoshi's house, so this would affect us also. But I know Hoshi, he's a wonderful man. And I wrote a letter, my husband and I wrote a letter supporting him, and I'd like to read it. Came in this morning kind of late, so if you didn't have an opportunity. We are writing this letter on behalf of our good friend Hoshi Mystery, who we have had the pleasure of knowing for the past 25 years. We have known Hoshi in several different capacities, and we have the highest degree of respect and admiration for him. We support Hoshi Mystery's application for the Mystery subdivision, filing number 2 in the preliminary plan. We believe it is a good design that will provide additional housing opportunities for the citizens of Penrose and Fremont County. And this will mean bringing new taxpayers and consumers into our local area. I see no disadvantages to permitting the subdivision and sale of the 7 residential lots. Finally, I believe that Hoshi Mystery's commitment and support for the Penrose has been a huge asset to the community for many decades. He is one of the most genuine and helpful people that we know, and we feel privileged for the opportunity to support him. I'd also like to say maybe there are things that need to be adjusted and tweaked, but I'm so proud of Hoshi for pursuing this, and we need these types of communities in our town. I've been there for 27 years, and I wish all of them went through such hard, grilling and whatnot, because there's a lot of unusual places in Penrose. And I think Hoshi is trying to do something for our community. And I wish him all the luck and support him.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Victoria King.
Good morning, Dr. King.
Good morning.
Afternoon.
Afternoon, right.
Afternoon.
Sorry.
It's
So
technically.
quickly I forget.
It is.
Doctor.
So-
We just have all sorts of doctors around here, don't we?
So I have learned so much this morning. I mean, I really appreciated the presentations, and I particularly appreciated the presentation of the iterations that this project has gone through. And of course, I know Hoshi very well. I live about 1 block to the south, and I walk down L Street and 2nd Street, and I appreciate the rural aspect of our community more than any of you can possibly fathom. But I also learned that the amount of space that will be available to really build on those lots with them in the present configuration is going to be very limited. And that's kind of sad, because it is one of the parts of living in rural Colorado is being able to have a barn and have animals and have space. I really came today to say that between the L Street access versus the 3rd Street access, I'm kind of in favor of the 3rd Street access for personal reasons, because I like walking down L Street and having it be not trafficked. And also, I do think that with 3rd Street access with Margarita Way, it is a paved road, it is a plowed road, and it is on our RE2 school bus system. And realizing that those houses might have children living in them, Margarita Way would give access to an existing bus route. But I did learn a lot of other things that I would think additional adjustments might be required in those plans to make it a feasible project. I'm also concerned about irrigation water, and I'm sure there are other people who are going to get up and talk about it. Although it was described as a fairly level, it's not. It's a very steep area that already has problems with irrigation water coming down and rainwater coming down. So I think abatement for irrigation and rainwater would also be necessary if people are going to be
You're
irrigating.
talking about after it goes through the pasture?
Well, yeah, it's
So
already
So the wastewater, so to speak, or drainage?
tailwater.
Tailwater,
Yeah,
yeah.
tailwater. Particularly if there is a plan to irrigate the pie-shaped land at the top, I think it's going to add difficulty to the people that live to the south of it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Charlotte Norman. Charlotte.
Twice in 2 meetings.
morning.
Welcome back.
Yes, well, thank you. Happy afternoon to you all.
Afternoon.
My name is Charlotte Norman. I'm the president of the Board of Directors of the Penrose Water District. We're a Colorado Special District with one mission, which is to serve our community, the unincorporated area known as Penrose, with municipal water and fire suppression water. First of all, let me say that Penrose Water District is not opposed to the Mystery subdivision, whether it's in this form or in another form. And we are ready to provide them with water as soon as the easement agreement is recorded. The tap fees are paid in full, and they are physically ready to have meters installed. We will install meters and provide water. But we are very much opposed to the vacation of 2nd Street for many reasons, as Ms. McCool has outlined: access and our potential use of that corridor in the future for utilities. The property to the north of Mr. Mystery's property is not in our district, but we do have a process whereby someone could annex that into the district. It would be a very arduous and expensive process, but it could be done. And we have had some contact from realtors who are interested in pursuing that. Even without that, I think it would be remiss for the county to let that easement go for fire suppression in the future. If that does not get annexed into our district, it will at some point be developed in some way anyway. By complete chance, I was the one that phoned in the fire on 2nd Street last year that the fire department brought to your attention. And it was quite amazing to watch how quickly that fire developed because they had difficulty getting into the site. But fortunately, we have some really dedicated volunteers that did get it knocked down, and the wind wasn't blowing, which was in our favor. So that's all I have to say. We are definitely opposed to the vacation of the easement, but we will supply this subdivision with water if it is approved by the board in this form or some other form. Thank you.
I want to make sure I heard you right, Charlotte. Did you say that there was a point in time where the wind was not blowing?
Yeah.
Yes, actually, it was a little bit strange. It was late in the afternoon, and I was getting my horses in, and I looked up and saw this plume of black smoke going straight in the air.
You know, I'm doubting everything you've ever told me at this point.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlotte.
Next, we have Holly Arnett.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm a Penrose resident. My name's Holly Arnett, and my husband and I have known Hoshi Mystery for a long time. And basically, I wanted to say that I am in support of his subdivision. After hearing the presentation, what everybody had to say, it looks like there are some challenges, but I think that it's a good project overall for Penrose to bring more families into the area and to provide a example of what maybe people might want to do in the future. So Mr. Mystery has done a lot of things, good things for Penrose, and he's done a lot of good property things for Penrose as a realtor, and so I support him. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Janice Fagan.
Good afternoon. My name is Janice Fagan, and I live on the corner of 3rd Street and I Street. And I am absolutely for Hoshi's development. I've known him for 24 years, and he is a pillar of the community. Everything he does is with the community in mind. He is very, if you call him and he needs help, or you need help, he will be right there for you, and he has been. I am for this development for him. I am very familiar with his property over the last 20 years. In fact, I bought my house from Hoshi, but way back in the day. And, but I want to talk about L Street, because that's a contention here. I have ridden my horses many, many times. Up 2nd Street and down L Street and back on Hoshi's 80 acres, which is now Black Hills. I've ridden miles and miles back there for years and years and years. And once you get to the end of that road and you have a choice to either go on to what was formerly Hoshi's property, once you get to that corner, you have Hoshi's property here, you have Wayne Oaken's property on this side and Happy Apple across 2nd. That has nothing to do with Hoshi's property, and I'm totally against Hoshi being responsible. You might feel the need to have that easement stay, and, you know, for utilities and whatnot, but I don't think it's Hoshi's responsibility to develop that. Right as you get to the end of the road there at that pinnacle where you have a choice to go down this way, there's a huge rock outcropping that your car literally slides down. And that's right across from Oakens and right across from Happy Apple. And where the fire was at the bottom of that hill. And I don't know why the fire department had a hard time going up 2nd Street, because that's a fairly decent road. Going down L, I wouldn't recommend it for anybody that doesn't have 4-wheel drive. And that's how bad the road is. And I just don't see it being developed in any form or fashion because of the irrigation that's there. There's 2 irrigation lines that are there, the head that comes in from the ditch, there's another head that's at Wayne Oaken's place down there, down that road. And, you know, like I said, I'm for the development, but I'm totally against Hoshi being responsible for maintaining that or developing that easement for the county. And that's all I have to say. You know, Hoshi is a wonderful person, and, you know, at the end of all of our, you know, all of our lives, he deserves this more than anything else to have this approved. So I appreciate you letting me talk. Thank you.
Thanks, Janice.
Thank you. Next, we have David McAllister.
I bet you never thought you'd have to deal with me again.
He's back. Hi, Dave.
Thanks for hearing me. And I live directly east of Hoshi. Hoshi sold me 5 acres 5 years ago. He's been a great neighbor, a good friend, and he is, as the previous person just said, he's very helpful, doing a lot of things for the community. It seems like I haven't studied all the stuff that you've had to go through, thank goodness. And I think it's wrong for me to say I don't want anybody there because I like my lifestyle and I just assume nobody else got to enjoy it. So I'm in favor of the growth part. I think he's doing a first-class subdivision. It seems like a common concern of some of us is the irrigation. And Hoshi and I met for about an hour and a half on Saturday, and he addressed a lot of these issues. We get, without any development back there, we get a huge amount of runoff coming down on my place. We've had some rains that we haven't seen for many years, and so I've had to make some diversions of the water to make sure it gets away from my house. I'm tired of pumping out basements and stuff like that, so I've diverted all of that. And in riding around the property with Hoshi, I mentioned that that was a concern of mine, was the irrigation, because the irrigation will actually throw a lot more water than even these huge 2-inch rains in an hour. Hoshi has offered to build a berm, if necessary, above my place to get rid of that water. I'm not sure where it would go, but he seemed to feel confident that he could address that. For myself, I feel like if he's met all of the requirements, I see no reason that it shouldn't be allowed. Some things I don't understand, though. So, well, a lot of things. So, thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
I think one of the contingencies, one way or another, will be that Dave be required to read all 458 pages of our packet.
And explain it later?
And explain it. Thank you, David. Next is Nancy Dodd.
Hi, Nancy.
Hi.
Hello.
Good afternoon. I am Nancy Dodd. I am a property owner and resident of Fremont County. I'm writing in support of Mr. Mystery's application for the subdivision filing. I believe his plan will provide much additional housing opportunities for the citizens of Fremont County that in turn will bring more taxpayers and consumers into the Penrose area, which I feel like he has done a great deal of improving in the Penrose area in the past few years. There is plenty of room for growth in Penrose. Mr. Mystery has attracted people to the area since moving here. He has done many wonderful things for Fremont County. I see no disadvantages in permitting a subdivision and the sale of these residential lots. Subdividing this land provides greater flexibility in the use of the land and increased housing, providing additional options for residents and more people to increase to shop locally, retail, dining, and entertainment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Aaron Wildfong.
Yeah, you got that pretty close.
Ooh. Okay.
I've known Hoshi for quite a while. My parents were in Apple Valley for several years, since the 80s, and they've worked with Hoshi quite often. What he's putting together there really fits that area. You know, Apple Valley has been kind of a nicer area, if I dare say that, in Penrose. And what he's putting together and the idea that he's going with is good. I am the 1.3 guy on that map. Yeah, the little guy down in the corner. And you've heard about L Street. L Street is for pedestrians. It should be for horses and just regular folks. There's more folks walking up and down that street than there are cars. The second street access I could see being viable later down the road as a consideration for future developments, but that's not the situation we're looking at here. And that's basically all I wanted to throw out was the L Street, if you guys could leave that alone, would be great. And it seems like Hoshi's always been responsible in reacting to folks' concerns about irrigation or other challenges that have come up. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next we have Glenn. And what's your last name, sir?
Orange, sir.
Orange?
Orange, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
How do you spell your last name?
It's O-H-R-N-S.
O-H-R-N-S.
Right. Sort of like it sounds. Anyway, as stated, my name is Glenn Orange. We own the lot that's just south of where Hoshi is putting the subdivision in. We're at 310L. So I'm at the corner south of him on L Street, the good part of it, and then 3rd Street is our northern boundary. And what I was looking at was this Margarita Way. The way it's designed to come down is fine, you know, for access and stuff. What concerns me is the runoff water. We get a lot of runoff that comes off of that area. And there is a county borrow ditch that goes along there. It's just barely adequate to handle these magnificent rains we've had this year. But the maintenance of that borrow ditch is almost impossible. It's got sides that sort of come down like that, and I can't get my riding lawnmower in there to get the weeds out or anything. So what happens is the overgrowth comes up and it dams up that drainage, and then it flows over 3rd Street and on into me. There's no borrow ditch that protects me, so it just comes off the road, drops onto me, hits my irrigation pipe, and heads towards the house. So I put a French drain in to try to alleviate some of that. I sort of went across our little bit northern pasture at the apple orchard to keep the stuff from flowing over on us. But with this amount of development feeding into this Margaritaville, I don't know, you make the road county standard, but where does that water go when it hits 3rd Street? It has right now minimal way to go without, I guess, not being an engineer, widening that borrow ditch to make it so the county can get their brush hog in there to at least knock some of the weeds down, or even allow me to get in there and knock some of the weeds down. So that's the big concern. It comes over and there's a little drainage under the road that I'm working with Road and Bridge on, and Penrose Water. It's probably that big, which is not big enough to handle that amount of water coming down and go underneath 3rd Street and on down L Street. So that's my concern, is the drainage. If the county's looked at hopefully maintaining or improving the drainage, for me especially, they're at the south end, a little bit.
Right.
So that's my concern, and I certainly thank you for
Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate
thank
that.
you.
That is the last on the list I have. Is there anybody else in the room that would like to address us on this issue? Going once, going twice. Then we will close the public hearing. And Doctor?
Start just on a couple points. So the 25-foot road easement vacation, I guess we covered, I think, pretty well in my presentation that there's just no connectivity to 2nd Street to the east or the west, and that there's precedent for not requiring 2nd Street right-of-way to the east and vacating it 2 blocks to the west. So it seems like there's...
Let me stop it. There is connection to the west. It goes right to the one on the west.
There is, sir.
But you said there wasn't for the east and the west. There is to the west.
Sorry, to the east, the subdivision wasn't required to dedicate anything. And then to the west, it's built for 1 block.
Right.
And then the next parcel to the west, it was vacated. So it seems as if the precedent has been set to not ever build out 2nd Street in a connected way, east to west. And it can't, the road easement really can't be used for utilities, but we talked about why that isn't necessary for utilities, because the 10-foot utility easement is there. And then just, with the idea that these are sort of constricted in size and shape, without that 25-foot easement, it would clear up title there and permit more buildability on the back of those pie-shaped lots. As far as L Street goes, I mean, I heard a lot about why, you know, maybe there's some safety issues on traveling L Street to get to fires or other hazards off Mr. Mystery's property. But those impacts aren't caused by this development. And I think in order to require this developer, Mr. Mystery, to construct L Street, there has to be some connection between the impact of his development and the construction of L Street. And I think the design that, you know, after all these configurations that has come about, creates a design that, you know, with the private street connecting to Third, doesn't create any additional impacts to Third that can't be absorbed without constructing L. I wanted to speak to the Division of Water Resources and apologize for not getting this to you all beforehand because I just got the email at the end of last week. But we did reach out to Kate Fuller at the Division of Water Resources. And I have an email that I can submit, or we can submit afterwards. And what we presented was the agreement between Mr. Mystery and Beaver Water Park, Inc. was to put a note on the preliminary plat about creating an entity to deal with that irrigation water as soon as the plat is approved. And that would be an entity that then would divert the irrigation water to the lots as agreed upon. And she did confirm that Division of Water Resources was fine with that arrangement, and I can submit that email to you all. We received that end of last week. And finally, well, I think with regard to fronting on public streets, we've heard a lot about that, so I don't want to spend a lot more time on that. But just to reiterate, you know, lots 1, 2, and 3 front on 3rd Street. Lot 4 is really the only one that only fronts on L. And with the design as approved, or as would be approved the way it's designed, Margarita Way does have an easement that connects to that public street. So I think the applicant has addressed that point.
Okay.
Hello again.
Alex?
I just want to talk about 3 items just real quick. We had some really great comments and everything, so just want to give my perspective on a few things. One of them was drainage, which was a great comment. So the state and county regulations require that historic flow paths and historic flow rates be maintained during any development. So we analyzed this site and determined that this will all be maintained even without detention because the development is so low impact. That's not to say that there's not current drainage issues out there right now on the road and the county ditch, but both me and the county engineer have determined that this development will not impact drainage in any way that would violate county or state laws. Second piece I want to talk about is it was brought up earlier by Mrs. McCool that if Black Hills Energy were to sell the property north, then you know the issue is that and what was stated is that it would be on the county to bring L Street up to county standards for that. If that were true, then the county would be on the hook for improving 2nd Street right now. The logic there is that the main reason we went away from L Street wasn't because of the cost of improving L Street, it was because of the cost of improving 2nd Street. 2nd Street doesn't touch the property, so we didn't feel like it was Mr. Mystery's responsibility. And the problem was that if we improve L Street, then it was brought up that then we have to improve 2nd Street as well, which adds a whole block of improvements. The logic earlier was that if Black Hills Energy property develops, then who would improve L Street? Well, it would be on the developer of Black Hills Energy, just like if right now, if we had to develop a road to get to our property, it'd be our responsibility. If that doesn't make sense, definitely ask me questions. Then the last thing I just want to talk about real quick is developable area on the properties. Just from glancing at the buildable areas, I think the worst lot would have at least 1.75 acres of developable land, 1 acre, 43,000 square feet. The property I live on in Fremont County is 4 acres. We probably have, well, we have exactly 2 acres of mixed hay alfalfa, which works great. It's getting cut today. We have a little goat operation on there. I was pulling goats yesterday when they were giving birth, and it's plenty of room for lots. We have a great house. We have plenty of room for a barn, all on half an acre that we actually really use. So those are the three pieces I just want to address. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to ask.
No, but I think, just for clarification, I think where you were talking about the development of Second would be if the front, to hit a front street off of these properties would be demanded, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it. Because you wouldn't develop Second if you were going off of L Street or below. That would be the only time that I can see that Second Street would need to be.
And I was referring to Second Street west of the property. So the issue that we ran in with version 1 and version 2 wasn't so much the cost of improving L Street, it's that the county then came back after discussing with the fire district that, well, if you're developing L Street, then we need you to improve Second Street west of the property as well.
The fire district said that?
Between the county
West
told us
from
based
that
on
intersection?
Yes, that's the problem with the cost of Second Street. We weren't worried about the Second Street on the north side of the property.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
I get that. That doesn't make sense either. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Toshi? You betcha. No, absolutely not. No, good.
Hoshi, I have been waiting for this moment.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. There's a lot that's been happening 2.5, 3 years of my life, so to speak. I started this project, as some of you may remember, with Black Hills Energy trying to force their way through my property and ruin 116 acres of mine. So I went out and finally said, okay, I don't believe in scorched earth policy, so I'll try to work with you, and I did. So he says, go find out what it would take for you to develop your 35 acres so that I could kind of quit and walk away. So that's why I came up with a dollar amount. Of course, I have an uncle who just wants to take my money away from me all the time. So the long and short of it is, I came up with a figure that I thought would help me get this matters resolved. There's a lot of things that have been said over here just now. And I do take personal hits very hard. I'm very soft-hearted. And to hear a neighbor say that Margarita Way is going to bring all this water down into a bar ditch, his complaint has never been that. It's when I irrigate my west field. And it's not because my west field is being irrigated, it's because there is an underground stream along L Street on the east side that's bounding my property. There's an underground stream that goes all the way to Arkansas River, that goes through L Street, all the way down, past Highway 50 and everything. Secondly, on that property that the gentleman referred to, the irrigation ditch line comes in underground on the west side of L Street. And then, I'm just being very politically polite and all that. Somebody decided that'd be a good idea to bring that irrigation water line from there, cut L Street, go into my property, not into my property, on the border of my property, and stick that water line into the culvert, which was supposed to not have been done, which the county never took care of, which I kept quiet for so many years. My irrigation water has been turned off because people used to complain across the street, the same people who put that water line in. So in a culvert, when you put in irrigation water, intake water, about that deep, right? So they can get the water along the 3rd Street and whatever that is, and they blame me for it, and my irrigation water has been cut off for 30 years. 30 years. At least 4 days every time. 3 irrigations each time. That makes 3 times 4 is whatever. Okay? So that's one more thing. And the last thing is that to think that I would be forced to put in 25 feet or give an easement of 25 feet on the north property line of mine, which, even though I'm a realtor and I understand easements and stuff like that, I didn't realize that this would happen. I didn't realize there'd be tragedies in my life. We never were planning to sell. If we had to sell, we'd sell the whole subdivision to somebody and we'd walk away and probably buy an island somewhere in the Mediterranean. That was the plan. Didn't happen, right? So I have to live with this, And this 25 feet, I think, was kidnapped from me, or whatever you want to call it, just so that I could make a 5-acre tract and sell that. So there are some regulations that are here that are not really very conducive for a property owner. I have total rights of my property. My property rights should be protected, and they're not being protected. I have the right to use my property for the highest and best use. That's part of the Bill of Rights, I guess. I'm imagining. I want to imagine this, okay? And so I'm trying to kind of say that whatever all these back and forth that I've gone through, nobody else has experienced that. And I know my team is great. They have gone through heck, but can you imagine that 4 times with me and with 4 different people? I've gone through a lot with this. I would really request you all to reconsider whatever the objections are from whoever it is, that this is not a bad development. I'm doing my best to do the right thing. I have my challenges, and I will take them as they come. I'm not crying like a baby, okay? Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for accepting my conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hoshi.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. I would like us all, those of us that have been here for the past 2 years and however many months when Sean Garrett was no longer with us, and the challenge that we had to have applications in the planning department. Please just think about, this project started this September after COVID started, after Sean Garrett left, and the planning department, we all struggled, right? Everybody that relies on the planning department and works with the planning department, it was a struggle. So to Ms. McCool's point of confusion, golly gee, there was a whole lot of confusion here also, because I only know that I submitted 3 versions. I don't know what the 4th version is, and I think what it was is that I was asking the question on, what do I submit now? Who's in charge? To whom do I respond? And I was guided to say, just make the whole packet so it's all together again and put everything in one spot and redo it again. So I think that's how version 4 came to be, is I was guided to just consolidate everything one more time into version 4 when we submit it, so it's all in one spot and nobody's pulling pieces. And that after that, it was just respond to the issue that came up at hand. So this has been a very long process. And if you think about what has happened in the last 2 years in the planning department, and yet we're still here and we're determined to help Mr. Mystery get to the end product. And we have complied with and worked to resolve challenges and issues and been forward-thinking and thinking outside the box and how do you make this happen. I think we have been there, and it has been a learning experience. And I hope we're never going through that again, right? Between COVID and just how the challenges in the planning department over the last 2 years. But we're here today, and I do hope that you see, as Commissioner Grantham has so clearly said, we've boiled it down to here are the things, and the things that are before us, the issues, the 2 issues, are very manageable. And this is a preliminary plan, not a final plat. So we have room to pin it down and be done. But it is a good idea, and you've heard support from Mr. Hoshi. So thank you for your consideration and your lunchtime.
Any questions? Comments?
Oh, cool. Thank you.
So probably, maybe just to kind of wrap things up a little bit, going to ask for a motion here shortly with 400 and some 84?
58.
458.
458.
Plus she just added some.
Great, 458 and counting pages to absorb on this. I think Commissioner Bell will have a motion for us to, we need more time to absorb this, and so we will. But to the point, you know, the questions I was asking on the distilling this down to the essential issues that are remaining. And you said manageable. That's good to hear. At least one of them is really significant. And I think it would, I know what it would cost in order to improve L Street. There's a lot to take into consideration, I think. And so I think that, amongst other things, are things that we just need to chew on and read through this packet and see what the full implications are. And so maybe that's just a little bit of a preface to what I anticipate is going to be a motion from Commissioner Bell. Any other comments? Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Given everything that you just said, I absolutely do agree. This is by far the longest application I've ever seen as a commissioner, and I'm in my 13th year. So it's been a while. When we face decisions like this, that we have a lot to digest and that are a little bit convoluted with many different iterations, and we need to consider where we are now in addition to how we got here. So I'm not prepared to make a decision on this today, Mr. Chair. My motion is to table this particular item, the Mishi subdivision filing number 2 for the preliminary plan 22-001, to table this until our meeting on October 24th. So not our next meeting, but the meeting following that, which will begin at 9:30 in the morning.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. And just for those that may not be quite as used to some of these things like this and tabling this, this is mostly for the reasons I stated. This is a lot for us to absorb and to go through and decisions to be made.
And one of the things I would add to that is we often, when we're facing decisions of this magnitude, we often choose to create a set of findings that actually guide us to our final decision. So I think we probably will be meeting between now and then as a workshop group to discuss this and to try to create findings that hopefully will lead us to the appropriate decision.
Correct.
Well, Mr. Chair, one more thing, if I may. Yeah, I couldn't vote on it today anyway. I agree with everybody that came up here, and Hoshi, I think you're one heck of a guy, man. I like you. I think you're very respectable, and your character is not on the table right here. It's all of this other information, has nothing to do with your character or how great of a guy you are. So it's going to take some time to go through this, and I've got 3 pages of notes myself that I took, so I added some more to it, and to make a decision, because if I had to make one right now, I couldn't vote for it just because of that. I don't know all the outcomes of it. That doesn't mean that'll happen later, but I got to look at it and make a decision myself.
All right, if there are no other comments, we have a motion, we have a second. Roll call.
Commissioner Bell?
Aye.
Commissioner McFall?
Aye.
Commissioner Grantham?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you all.
Old business.
Old business.
Old business on October 24th.
Yes.
Angela, Alex, everybody, thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Let's go ahead and go to item number 5. I know they're going to get down here, but
I need to find my correct sheet. Here we go.
guys, we still have to
What is it?
finish the meeting here.
All right, folks, We still have more business to conduct here, so would appreciate it if you'd take the conversation outside.
What a trooper.
Has he been there the whole time?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. We didn't give him permission to leave. All right, item number 5 under new business as we go back into the order. A request for a waiver from the drainage requirements of section 4.11.6.18 of the obsolete, that's not part of the title, but it is the obsolete travel trailer park and campground zone district for Royal Gorge Land Ventures, Royal Gorge Rafting, 41746 US Highway 50, Canyon City. The owner has applied for a building permit for approximate 5646 square foot event tent to support the daily operations of the campground. This tent will be used to satisfy the recreational space requirements of this district. And for this, we turn to Mr. Victoria.
Hello, everyone.
Hold on a second, Dan. Carrie, thank you.
Thank you, Carrie,
for your presentation.
Thank you
on the
so
last
much.
Matter.
Good, I hope it was helpful. I know you have
Yeah,
a-
very much so.
Safe driving to go through.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Okay.
Thank you.
so much.
Sorry, Mr. Victoria.
Quite all right. Yeah, so we had a situation come in where the applicant applied for this tent, I believe, let's see here. Yeah, approximately 5,646 square feet. Now, this tent could cause a potential impacts, which under the obsolete zone district regulations that this campground operates under, since it's been an active campground the entire duration. So while the county has removed that zone district from our regulations, they're still subject to the requirements of that district since they've maintained operation. One of the requirements of that zone district is a drainage plan. So when the applicant came in to me to request a building permit, or came into the building department, submitted an application for a 5,600 square foot structure, I instructed him a drainage plan would be a requirement of that. The applicant feels that a drainage plan, that he's mitigating all the needs for a drainage plan on this one parcel. So he has approached the county for a waiver request. So I don't have any wiggle room in my regulations to do those things, so that's why this is being presented to you.
And I would just note, this is an odd procedure because normally it would have to go to Board of Zoning Adjustment, but because we eliminated the zone district, there are these lingering issues out there, and there would be no regulations for BOCC to make a decision under. And so this is more a clarification than anything else, that's not going to apply to this particular circumstance.
Gotcha.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, appreciate that. All right, any questions or comments?
Just to note, we do have a site plan where this is going to go on the property. I'm all good with it. I'm ready with the motion if you're ready.
I am ready.
I move to approve the request for drainage, for waiver of a drainage requirement, section 4.11.6.18 of the obsolete travel trailer park campground zone district for Royal Gorge Land Adventures, Royal Gorge Rafting at 41746 US Highway 50, Canyon City.
Second.
Okay, has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
I would just note, Mr. Chair, this piece of property actually does front the Arkansas River. And I think we've discussed a time or two that the water is going to go where the water is going to go. And in this particular case, it's going to go to the river.
Kinda has
So simply because of that, even given the obsolete district that we're zone district that we're looking at, I think that requiring a drainage study is a little over the top, so.
And yeah, I mean, that's really to the point of this decision is that the river there along the right edge of that map that's up on the screen and the roof area, the underlying basically tabletop of stone that is underneath the surface there. You don't need an engineering certificate to understand where the water is going to go, whether it falls on the ground in that spot or whether it falls on the tent top in that spot. So it's heading nearly due east to the river. Is that right? That's.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And so with that, if there's no other comments, roll call.
Commissioner McFall?
Aye.
Commissioner Bell?
Aye.
Commissioner Grantham?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Very good. Item number 6, the reappointment of Mike Madone to the Fremont County Heritage Commission for a term ending December 31, 2026.
Mr. Chair, I would like to address briefly our next 4 items. These are all appointments or reappointments for folks to different boards and committees here in Fremont County. We do not take these appointments and reappointments lightly. For a reappointment, we do take a look at the job that each individual person has done. We also do ensure that we have in writing their commitment that they are willing to continue serving Fremont County in this way. So these next 4 should go pretty quickly. So this item, I move to reappoint Mike Madone to the Fremont County Heritage Commission for a term that will end on December 31st of 2026.
Second.
Has been moved and seconded. Just to make note, Mike Madone is a great addition to our Heritage Commission. And in fact, it looks like got his portrait hanging back here. Sometimes he plays the role of Mike Madone, but he is most often John C. Fremont for us. But they do look an awful lot alike, and that's why he does that part. So, but Mike does a great job on the commission and is a great addition. So, without further ado, roll call.
Commissioner Bell? Aye. Commissioner McFall?
Aye.
Commissioner Grantham?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item number 7, the reappointment of Ed Norton, heard that name, to the Fremont County Board of Zoning Adjustment for a term ending February 28, 2026.
Mr. Chair, we did receive a letter from Mr. Norton, and he would like to continue, and I appreciate him continuing for us, and I move to reappoint Ed Norton to the Fremont County Board of Zoning of Adjustment, term ending February 28, 2026.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Any further comments? Roll call.
Commissioner McFall?
Aye.
Commissioner Bell?
Aye.
Commissioner Grantham?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item number 8, reappointment of Paul Dorman as alternate to the Fremont County Board of Appeals for a term ending August 1, 2026.
Again, Mr. Chair, Mr. Dorman has done a fine job, agrees to serve another term. I move to reappoint Paul Dorman as alternate to the Fremont County Board of Appeals for a term that will end on August 1st of 2026.
Second.
Has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Bell?
Aye.
Commissioner McFall?
Aye.
Commissioner Grantham?
Aye.
Motion carries.
And last but not least, if we can make it stretch another 3 minutes.
We don't really need to do that.
The appointment of a new member to the Fair Board with the term ending December 31, 2026.
Mr. Chair, we received a letter from Jim Sheridan from Penrose, and he is farm raised and interested in serving on our Fair Board, and I think that's a great idea, and I move to appoint Mr. Jim Sheridan to the Fremont County Fair Board with a term ending December 31st, 2026.
I second that, just with the note that we all know Mr. Sheridan from the work he does with the Penrose VFW, and he is a fine community volunteer. I look forward to him serving with the Fair Board.
Has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner McFall?
Aye.
Commissioner Bell?
Aye.
Commissioner Grantham?
Aye.
Motion carries.
And with that, we have come to the end of our agenda. There being no other business, we are adjourned.